Holler if you hear me, and welcome to tonight's edition of Art Uncensored. It is the top of the hour, 10 p.m. Eastern, and we are here and together to go and finish page 13 to issue 7 of my comic book Encrypted. We've got a more stylized sort of layout here where the whole page has this one single composition with some of the a more lighter example of Art Nouveau framing, but with this whole thing where it's both simultaneously a splash page and one that has multi panels going on at the same time with different angles from a down shot there to more elaborate sort of perspective here, and that various directions really trying to have locations and perspective and figures, or figures and locations at various perspectives, and to bring up some variety, some location variety at least, or just to go and do that and show that off because, well, like I've said, one of my favorite and also one of the underappreciated comics of Frank Miller's career was the last thing he ever wrote and drew for Marvel. That he actually it was a comic he really made himself because he did write some stuff for them later. It was called Elektra Lives Again, which if you see there's several pages there where he has some very strong, very eye-catching uses of perspective, 2-point and 3-point and all of that you really should go and check out, whether you get it through the, I'm not sure if it's still in print anymore, Elektra by Frank Miller and Bill Sienkiewicz hardcover, which I do have, as well as actually having a first edition of Elektra Lives Again when it first was released in 1990, and it was released under Marvel's Epic Comics imprint in a wider 9x12 sort of hardcover style presentation, basically an American comic book of an American mainstream comic book character that had a standalone story printed in the way that comics are printed in France, where they're given more of a traditional book treatment with usually that 9x12 hardcover page format of the French word for it being bande dessinée. That was nice to see Frank Miller go into putting that French influence in what he was doing, versus how much people always want to go on about how much he loves to put manga into comics or things like that. But of course, in the idea of how the manga and the unfortunate weeb culture or otaku culture in American comics being so much more prominent than what's happened in Italy or France. So now, if you really want to go and have that like foreign influence where you're the one who knows something everyone else doesn't know, it would be a matter of bringing up and incorporating what the Italians or what the French have gone and done with the comic book format. And Ruby Hoove with a $5 super chat comes in. Hi, have a good evening. Hello to you, Ruby Hoove. And of course, since you upgraded from simply ordering issue 1 of Encrypted to a 1-year subscription that started with issue 2, I saw that issue 2, you got your copy, and let's hope that you loved it as much as the first one, since now we've got 2 of these out there. And there will be our 3rd coming up, because yes, the last Friday in March, we will be launching issue 3 as a pre-order, of which, since you're a subscriber, you will be already having a copy of issue 3 ready for you. So let's hope, and don't forget that in the back pages in the letter section of issue 2, there is a little email address where you can go and write in a little response to tell me what it is you thought of it, what it is you thought of issue 2, so that we can get your response printed in the back of issue 3 for our little letters right there. Let's go and get that happening. I hope you enjoyed it, and that you'll enjoy will be coming up next, because the issue that we're finishing in this month, issue 7, is going to be the last issue of that 1-year subscription you got, since you already bought issue 1. And although you did get your subscription before issue 2 saw print, that still means because you had already bought the previous one. So yeah, that means a 1-year subscription being 6 issues because of the bi-monthly publishing schedule we have. So yeah, your subscription goes all the way until issue 7 sees print next January. And Rubu says, I do love it. You're very talented. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. The writing and the artwork and everything else behind it, not just all the creative side, but the actual presentation when it comes to printing and shipping and all that, will improve issue by issue to the point where by the time we get to this issue, where then after this, you would have to renew that subscription, you will be going on in and seeing a very, very prominent development and improvement from one issue to the next, which I certainly hope will be something that I will. It won't just be a matter of do I think I accomplished it. It'll be a matter of you, the customers out there, will go out there and love what I've done and want to develop and sing along with how I have developed this work and how creatively I have gone on and worked up and worked up and worked up and improved and improved. This is very much my parallel to something like, say, a point of reference for me being the early issues of Marvel's Conan, the Barbarian comic, where I'm specifically referring to the artist on that. The original artist that they had for Marvel's Conan book comic from the 70s was a young Barry Windsor Smith, who did it across the first 4 years of the book, which was on a bi-monthly schedule for those years. So issue by issue, if you go from issue 1 to the issue 24, which was the last one he did, it almost looks like a totally different artist drew issue 24, although it was the same artist. But every 2 months having a new issue to come forward, that was one where he brought that that job security towards developing a style that was something unparalleled to everything else that Marvel was publishing, and really made himself, visually distinguished and his own artistic identity. And holler out there to Alpha Proto as well. Nice to see you here as we're going in. I'm also pretty jazzed today because I saw that now we've mentioned before about the Punisher being one of the major Marvel characters I love. It was the only superhero graphic tee I ever bought for myself was the Punisher White Skull and all that. And well, now it turns out, yes, there still is, the pussyfooting with the newer Punisher comics that Marvel has done being crap. And but yeah, so Ruby says, we'll re-up, just let me know how much, when, and where to pay. Well, all right, that's great to know. It'll simply be a matter of when we come around after January. January is when issue 7 will see print. And because of your 1-year subscription, the way it goes, that will be the last issue of your subscription. So then it'll be simply by the end of January when we launch the pre-order for issue 8. That is when you would have to go and renew the subscription. And it'll be a matter of a regular subscription will be $60, and a 1-year subscription with your copies autographed are $90. That's the difference, because yes, the way, well, any given issue is $5, an autographed copy of an issue is $10, an autographed copy with a sketch inside is $20, or the other two options are for a 1-year subscription or a 1-year subscription with autographs, and those are either $60 for a year, a subscription, or $90 for that year with a 1-year subscription with your signatures. Just to be specific about that, so you're good all the way until the last Friday of January. So yes, for the rest of the year up until then January, you, Ms. Hoove, you out there, Ruby, are going to be getting your Encrypted going and going and going. And since we're drawing issue 7 right now, and we're going to have it done before this month is out, so that means, yes, that your 1-year subscription is going to be fulfilled. So we got it. And Alpha Proto brings up John Buscema is a good Conan artist too. Comic book wise, I would say John Buscema is the definitive Conan artist, but from what I've heard from Roy Thomas, initially Marvel was reticent about doing a comic book of a pulp hero license like this. So even though John Buscema was the artist that Roy Thomas wanted, and also John Buscema himself wanted to do it, Marvel did not want to go and risk losing even more money on having to pay for this license and then go and deal with the page rate of one of their biggest artists. So they went with Barry Windsor Smith because he was, a 19-year-old British art school student who was grateful for whatever jobs they had thrown at him in that, like, for the past year or so, an issue of X-Men here, or an issue of Daredevil there, an issue of the Avengers and things like that. And then, all right, well, you want to go and do this regular Conan series? And he went, okay. At that point, I think Barry Windsor Smith's page rate for drawing was like $20 a page in 1970. But that was enough where doing that regularly as a bi-monthly comic, they were doing it. It wound up developing enough of an audience that then it made Barry Windsor Smith a legend in that generation of comic artists, and also made Conan, it was the success of Marvel's Conan comic book that's really what inspired the Conan movie with Arnold to get made. And to the point where if you look at the behind the scenes stuff of the Conan DVD, producer Edward Pressman got the idea on the back of how Robert E. Howard's stories had developed such a big new life after his death because of paperbacks and because of comic books. And when he wanted Arnold to the part, he took Arnold to a comic shop and showed him, here's Conan, here's all the stuff he's known for. To the point where even major figures that appear in the Conan duology of films with Arnold appear from other non-Conan related characters. Like the villain Thulsa Doom was a character that Kull the Conqueror, a related Robert E. Howard character, fought more regularly in Kull-related comic books than in any of the original stories, because there are only 3 published Kull the Conqueror stories in Howard's lifetime, and then the rest were all done as like a little paperback afterwards, digging through Howard's archives of like either unpublished or unfinished stories, and then putting them up, putting them out that way. Like how famously the very first Conan the Barbarian story ever written was a rewrite of a rejected Kull the Conqueror story called By This Axe I Rule, which then got published with decades after Robert E. Howard's suicide in a little Kull the Conqueror paperback that was published by the same people who did the famous paperback reprints of all the Howard Conan stories, with all of those covers that were painted by Frank Frazetta, that made Frank Frazetta the comic art, fantasy art icon that he became. And hello to RJ. Nice to see you there. And if you really want to see John Buscema at his best, go and track down all the stories that John Buscema did for the Savage Sword of Conan, which was the black and white anthology magazine that Marvel published in tandem with their Conan comic book, monthly regular comic book, and all the other related ones like Red Sonja or King Conan or Kull and all. And they even did some Solomon Kane stuff. And yeah, I did track down for $5, they had the essential Marvel DC Showcase style phone book, black and white paperback for the Savage Sword of Conan that Dark Horse reprinted in the 90s and the 2000s when Dark Horse had the Conan license. They printed, of course, they made a whole bunch of new Conan comics, but then also scrupulously went and reprinted all the previous Conan Marvel produced comic book stuff. They did that very, very well, including those stories reprinting in those big phone book size trades of the old Savage Sword of Conan, and definitely the best stuff that Buscema ever did for the character. But yes, I was mentioning before about the Punisher, and well, the way that Marvel and DC have now been quietly bringing up how all of the wokeification of characters, or the erasure or humiliation of characters that contradict the narcissistic Marxism of the Tumblr bloggers and deviant art gooners that they've been hiring instead of actually talented people. Well, there now, it turns out, is a new Punisher Epic Collection. Because you've been following Marvel, then you know that for the last years or so, like decade or so, the way that the most economical way to be able to go and get like bigger collections, like trade collections of the older, actually readable Marvel stuff, whether it's X-Men or if it's Spider-Man or the Avengers, are the Epic Collections. And well, the Epic Collections of the Punisher, they had them in print for a while. Now they've all been out of print for a long time, it feels like. Hence why if you go to Amazon and try to buy those Epic Collections that they did do of the original 80s, 90s run of the Punisher solo comics, they are beyond expensive to try and find because it's all secondhand marketing, it's secondary market. But now there is a brand new Epic Collection that they've done, and it's not a new printing of one of the older Epic Collections, but it's like the latest edition. Like how now I mentioned that they've got they're now got available for pre-order. The next Epic Collection for Daredevil is, of course, the second half of the Frank Miller Daredevil run, because like last fall they went and released the Epic Collection for the Daredevil run that contained the first half of Frank Miller's issues on the title. And now, just recently, they went and reprinted. They've now got a new volume of the Punisher Epic Collection. For the one, it's like the next volume, like volume 8, which was past the previous volume, which went up through that European, that Euro trip multi-issue story arc that they did with the Punisher back in the... Right, here we are. We got it. Yep, here we are. There it goes. Yes, available, showed up March 10th, actually. So, yes, this is very fresh, only about a week old. A never before collected era of the Punisher. Because, yeah, remember the Punisher being so popular in the 90s, but far less of a mass market sort of speculator boom exploitation kind of deal as what Marvel did with the X-Men or Spider-Man stuff. Even though the Punisher did have 3 ongoing monthly books, as well as for a while a black and white magazine, still, I mean, not as permissive and as notorious as what they were doing, Marvel was doing with X-Men or Spider-Man and all that. So, here we've got this one called Survival with this nice Pakela and Dan Panosian penciled and inked cover, with him in his classic tights with the coloring that makes him look more turquoise than black. Like basically what they did with the Punisher when he appeared on the Spider-Man cartoon, where he had like space laser guns because there was rules against them having regular real world guns on the Spider-Man cartoon, even though also on Fox Kids was Batman the Animated Series, where gangsters and criminals had old-fashioned Tommy guns and all that, but not this one. I mean, okay. And now this one, it's issues 76 through 84, the 5th and 6th Punisher annuals, as well as an interesting one-shot where it's the Punisher, Spider-Man, and Sabretooth working together. Punisher, Spider-Man, Sabretooth, designer jeans. Okay. I mean, Punisher and Spider-Man, I mean, putting them in a crossover together, one shot, does make some sense. If you remember, the Punisher made his first appearance as a Spider-Man villain. All right. And maybe this might just have something to do with the fact that now that the new Spider-Man film, Brand New Day, is going to feature John Bernthal's Punisher. Yes, Kurt Angle's nephew, John Bernthal, coming back to be the Punisher in this movie. So, yeah, now you know why. Now I wonder if this means that they'll go and do the Volume 2 omnibus for the Marvel Max Garth Ennis Punisher run. Because yeah, remember when they went and they ended the monthly Marvel Knights Punisher title that Garth Ennis was writing. They then went and relaunched. Now they moved it over from Marvel Knights to Marvel Max, and Garth Ennis was the writer on that for like 5 straight years, like the first 60 issues or so of the series. And a couple years back, I got sent for my birthday, but Nick sent me the Volume 1 Punisher Max Garth Ennis Omnibus, which, it had the first 30 issues of his 60-issue run, and that miniseries Born, which was Garth Ennis's version of that origin one-shot that they did with the Punisher in the 90s that crossed over with the Nam. That was written by Don Lomax, who did the famous Vietnam memoir comic, Vietnam Journal. Yes, Punisher Invades the Nam. But basically, an elongated version of that, with a different perspective that's also actually historically knowledgeable about the Vietnam War. Because one thing about Garth Ennis is, like I said, 80% of his writing, it gets ignored by the Rich Johnstons of the world, who just want to pigeonhole him as all he ever did was the Punisher or the Boys or Preacher, because the edgelord anti-superhero stuff of the Boys and the Reddit atheism and comic book form that is Preacher. And well, because he's an established mainstream Marvel hero, whether the Rich Johnston and those who just repeat what he has to say, like Ankara, like the character or not, the Punisher is still an established mainstream Marvel character. So of course they'll acknowledge that. And now RJ brings up, weird to think that means the Punisher's uncle is Captain America. Well, I do know that in the Earth 616 regular Punisher comics that had been done throughout the 80s and 90s, that the Punisher, one of the few like mainstream Marvel characters that he respected was Captain America, because from one veteran to another, because of that era was still when the Punisher's background was that he was a Vietnam vet. And by that time they kept on. They were still doing things like, say, when it was Rick Remender doing the mainstream Earth 616 Punisher. That's when, of course, they started saying they shifted the timeline like they did with Iron Man's origin, where now it was Punisher fought in Iraq or Afghanistan, and it was in Afghanistan is where Iron Man got abducted, and that's where he first made the Iron Man suit. And, to update it, because at that point, 30 years away was Vietnam, so that was too far away for them to have not still been like the 30 something kind of in their prime hero. With the exception of the Marvel Max Punisher era that Garth Ennis was doing, where that took place in the present day and was going on in real time. So no, Frank Castle he was still in his original Vietnam vet incarnation, and he had been fighting crime against crime, killing crime for 30 straight years. But also the details about whatever Frank Castle's opinion of Captain America is, at least in the Marvel Knights Punisher stuff that Garth Ennis wrote, he doesn't really bring up Captain America at all. And in the Marvel Max stuff, well, because of, at least with the Punisher Marvel Max stuff, it's supposed to be as like edgy and real world as possible, which means there is no Spider-Man is not there. Any of the interactions with the mainstream Marvel characters that were there in the Marvel Knights Punisher stuff Ennis wrote is completely gone from the Max work, with the exception of Nick Fury. Nick Fury's the only one there, and also he's not to do with like the Shield as we know it. It's more close to like the CIA, to the point where then with Nick Fury showing up as like an authority figure that challenges Frank Castle in the Max Punisher stuff that he did, he winds up going and getting like some spin-off miniseries and some other titles that Garth Ennis started writing on the side to writing the Max Punisher stuff, to the point where there's an omnibus of that as well available, where it's Punisher where it's the Max Punisher and the Max Nick Fury together or fighting each other. And of course, but another great thing, the real icing on the cake, with having about a year worth of Punisher monthly issues that have never been reprinted before, you also have another one-shot published in this new trade, The Punisher, A Man Named Frank, which is Chuck Dixon collaborating with John Buscema. Absolutely, positively, yes, because I've mentioned that at one point the Punisher had 3 monthly books going on simultaneously in the 90s. Well, Punisher Warzone stood out from the rest by that was the one that Chuck Dixon wrote for the most out of the Punisher books they were doing, but also he wound up getting more esteemed, like Silver Age artists to work on Warzone. Like there was a story arc called River of Blood, which they did have in a trade, which I do own a copy of, where it was the Punisher being involved with the going up into Russia, post-Soviet Russia, and Joe Kubert was the artist on that. And then there was another storyline that involves him being kept as a POW out there in South America that was drawn by John Buscema. And those were multi-issue story arcs that ran for like 5 or 6 issues or so. So that was a great distinguishing feature of Punisher Warzone, deeper into its run versus War Journal or the main Punisher. So yes. And A Man Named Frank is an extension of that, where it's Chuck Dixon working with John Buscema, because, well, besides the Punisher, the only other character that Chuck Dixon really got to do like any other type of like work on besides a one-shot or an annual or a few issues or so was Conan. You look at Chuck Dixon's bibliography in Wikipedia when it comes to Marvel, it's like different Punisher things, some issues of the main one, other issues of War Journal, and also, but then a lot more than the others of Warzone, and also different Conan titles, and also a few issues of Moon Knight. Like that time in Moon Knight where they had the Moon Knight monthly book in the 90s that people only ever want to talk about for those issues where Stephen Platt was the artist, and he immediately caught attention. So, of course, Rob Liefeld opened up his checkbook and got Stephen Platt to come over to do some stuff for Image. And then after that, Stephen Platt just walked away from doing comics. He came on like a comment really, really briefly and then just went away. like that one artist, Nick Manabat, he became like a hot new artist with Image, doing Cybernary at Image with Steve Gerber, but he wound up dying of leukemia within 2 years of making his debut at Image. So in that case, it was a matter of he was a great talent that then died young, as opposed to a guy who just walked away. And also because this is a nice new fresh in print Epic collection right here, because look right there, March 10th. Now, if only Marvel would go and do new printings of the previous Epic collections of the Punisher they've done, because I have a few of them. I have the first one they did that has the first 10 issues of the monthly book, and that 5-issue miniseries they did, which was the first solo Punisher. And then I have the one that involves that storyline where it is Day of Vengeance, where it's the Punisher fights Dr. Doom, and then there's the Punisher villain going up against the Fantastic Four and all that. And the one where it's the issues before this, where it's the Eurotrip ones. And we've got Mark Daly in the chat who says, reports of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. I certainly hope so. Mark Daly, it's nice to see you back, and I hope that I did not check today. I know that your autographed copy of issue 2 was shipping late because of the USPS. They reported that it would be arriving late, but I hope that since that last check, you got your copy of issue 2 with its nice gold signature right there. And hello to Weatherman saying, okay, I'm up. Hello all. Hello to you. We're just, we're celebrating around here, not because of the trailer for Spider-Man Brand New Day. I already knew about how that one's supposed to have Kurt Angle's nephew coming back to be the Punisher again. But now between Marvel tacitly admitting that the Punisher, sells a lot better than Kamala Khan, between now they are doing facsimile reprints of Punisher stuff, like the first issue of his solo miniseries before his first monthly book started, but now they've got a new Epic collection in print for the original monthly book, for the original monthly run. But so far, the Punisher Epic collections that Marvel has done have all just been reprinting the first monthly Punisher title and different spin-offs and the annuals as well. Like other ones they've done where characters had multiple monthly ongoing books, like say with Spider-Man or X-Men, you go to those Epic collections, and another way that they milk the money out of you is that they go and they'll have storylines there that we're taking across like 3 or 4 monthly X-Men or Spider-Man related monthly titles. So that's how they go and pump out more Epic collection volumes. And remember, these are like $40 to $50 a pop cover price. So that's why, the Clone Saga takes like the volume 1 Spider-Man Epic Clone Saga omnibus is like 5 of those Epic collections put together, because they're chronicling it across like 5 different monthly titles. But then the Punisher in the 90s had 3 monthly books going simultaneously, and all of these monthly books, all of these Epic collections have just been going and collecting the main monthly title and those one-shots and annuals that they've done. And Mark says, got it in the mail, just read it, a figurative and literal page turner. Well, thank you right there. And well, of course, Mark, your letter about issue 1, the email you sent about issue 1, besides the quote you gave in the chat right here, that the email response about issue 1 will be reprinted in issue 3. And, I see you named Fiona's supplier of jets after me. I'm honored. Well, there is somebody else who lives and runs a lucrative business out of Texas named Mark that may or may not have been a federal asset that Fiona made into a federal asset for herself. So it may be a reference to you, or it may be a reference to a Texas businessman who's involved in tech and sports in Texas, in particular Dallas, who also does not like Trump, but at the same time, he named a massive yacht that he owns Fountainhead. But yes. And Art just says, if the rumors are true, the last Marvel movie people will like. Well, it will, from what's going on with the new one when it comes to how the arm's length that the Sony productions have kept away from the rest of the MCU. I mean, all right. Like maybe because of the renegotiation that Sony made with Marvel after Amazing Spider-Man 2 did so bad, where they're going to reboot it again, but within the MCU, but the films that are starring Spider-Man are still going to be Sony, hiring everybody in the cast and crew. They're going to be funding them. They're the ones with the final creative say. I mean, all right. And the thing is, oh no, and it's the Disney that will be bringing their actors or whatever over to their movies, and it's those who have to play ball, like having Chris Evans or Robert Downey Jr. appear in the first of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, but it's them coming over to the to a Sony production. Yeah, and because this is one of those types, one of those Amazon sales, here's the sample they've got right here. Yes, it's one of those where you can read the sample for this new of the Punisher. I also like the nice red circle back there. I mean, in the earlier issues of the Punisher, he did go and fight the Yakuza, and that's probably also why when the Punisher was getting into his own title had been going for a bit in the late 80s when they made that first Dolph Lundgren Punisher film. And yeah, the Yakuza are involved. There's the Lady Yakuza Queen and all that involved. So it looks like in this one, our friend Frank is coming back to the land of the rising sun. After the previous epic collection they have that they did, that involves the several issues that go on throughout Europe. I mean, that makes sense, from Europe to Japan. And that Punisher Euro trip epic collection is I do have that one. Let's see. Well, of course, they got the main credits. Although, yeah, they've got writers involved include, well, we've got Peter David, yes, and Mike Barron coming back, great. Tara, and let's see, these are all the writers. Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, who did the issues of the previous epic collection, where it was throughout Europe. And, oh yes, well, the red circle also makes them stand out. Well, now I remember this was the early to mid 90s, and Marvel and DC were still doing the old analog way of coloring comic books. And because of those type of analog coloring techniques, that's why characters that have black costumes or dark hair, they color them not with a kind of grayscale, but with a blue tint to them. Like Superman, for the longest time, there would be the blue tint in his hair. And also with the Punisher, he would have varying shades or tones of blue in his costume, which is supposed to be, black and white tights. And that transferred over to when you did get to see the Punisher for those couple episodes of the Spider-Man cartoon, and his costume is turquoise. Let me go and there we see. You also got Val Mayerick, the artist who co-created Howard the Duck, as well as Scott McDaniel, who made his name doing that weird but interesting era of Daredevil with D.G. Chichester writing, where they had the storyline that changed Daredevil's costume from the classic red tights into the turquoise tights with the samurai shoulder pads. And then after that, McDaniel went over and was the original artist on the early years of the Nightwing monthly title. And that was also an era of Scott McDaniel when he did Daredevil, where he really drew Sin City style Frank Miller with the heavy brush inking, high contrast black and white shadows that had little to no line work in it. And of course, yes, there's John Buscema. We've got other artists I'm not familiar with. Stephen Butler's a name I've seen around, but I'm not sure who he is. And yeah, the cover that you see here is for the cover of the cover on the cover. The cover for the trade is the cover for annual number 5. And well, our opening page here is printed circuits, but well, if you want a good reference for doing rendering printed circuits with actual analog drawing, well, here you go. Yeah, the blue highlights, that is, yeah. like of that era where it was Daredevil with the shoulder pads and the like, it was like some kind of like black and red thing, but turquoise highlights with coloring. Mark says, I've been alternately laid up with horrific back pain or zoned out on painkillers for the bulk of the last month. So took 2 trips to the doctor and an ER visit. Just now feeling normal again. Well, shit, man. Your absence is totally understandable if that's what you were going through. I mean, it's between that and Weatherman with the lack of internet service he had. When I've got regulars that go away like that, I perfectly get what's going on. They've got real shit in their life that's leading to what's happening here. Real world things, okay. And glad you've recovered. Nice, good. At least from the way that the like preview layouts of this looks like, it appears like they're starting the comic. They're starting this trade with the annual, the number 5, and the artist went like all the way full bleed up to like the border of the page. Because in the 90s, it would become like a big sort of visual whiplash where if you get a trade or an omnibus of that stuff, and if it's different artists working on a series or different series, ongoing series, all with the same character, then an artist that goes full bleed with his artwork that goes all the way out to the furthest edge of the page versus those that still have conventional panel borders where there is that negative space, there's that gutter around the page, it can really, throw you off. But no, this is not you can tell this looks like, okay, the mainstream artists were now trying to go and do what the image guys were doing. Because the artwork here, it is more visually coherent and there's more conventional like visual storytelling with panel arrangements and page layouts. But at the same time, the actual drawing itself is trying to go and do that Rob Liefeld style of all the cross hatching and rendering, just not as extreme. Like somebody trying to draw like Rob Liefeld, but actually having coherent, storytelling, visual storytelling. And since the Punisher in the 80s and 90s had a lot more quality control with the writers that were working on him on his monthly books, it's bound to be a lot better than other 90s mainstream comics. Because there were some titles that were able to fly under the radar when it came to all the titles that wound up going to shit in chasing the dragon of that, 90s anti-hero style. Maybe it was just a matter of changing with the times proof that the Punisher was, because he already was a homicidal vigilante. So he was there already, that type of edgy character before the 90s. So he was not a character that was trying to be altered to fit in with everything that now was suddenly cool between the Image guys and the Dark Knight Returns copycats. Yes, everybody send good vibes to Mark for what the back pain he was dealing with. And a lot of copycatting in comics when something is successful. But like I said, that first story right there, that was an artist who definitely knows what he does, what he's doing. And whether they were like big names or not, the earlier issues of the Punisher in his monthly series actually does not get the credit they deserve for helping to shape the Image founding artists, because several of the founding artists in Image Comics did some early regular work before they became names on the titles they did, but before they quit Marvel to go form Image on the Punisher. Like the earliest work that Whilce Portacio had as a penciler at Marvel were early issues of the Punisher. Initially the artist was Klaus Janson, but then after he quit for those first few issues, then Whilce Portacio took over as penciler there, and that exaggerated 90s style art that he was one of the major examples of was there in his Punisher issues, but done with an actual visually coherent arrangement of pages. Like that sort of editorial insight of having that clear storytelling that makes sense visually is there in those issues, including an issue that of the Punisher where it was part of a crossover with Anno Senti, John Romita Jr.'s era of Daredevil, where it's the both of them going after a thinly veiled caricature of the Chicago Tylenol murders, but it's from and then they clash, but it's from one point of view and the other. And of course, can you tell that Anno Senti is an annoying bleeding heart liberal when she writes Frank Castle's interior monologue and it's an ignorant, woke New Yorker white girl's portrayal of how like right-wing warmonger type of guys talk, where they scream at everybody as being a bleeding heart liberal? No, it's just confession through projection from Jon Stewart's socialists. Yeah, and it becomes funny. But that was redeemed by at least having the other half of the story, the Punisher half of the story, being written by Mike Baron, who actually knows how to write characters like that and write them well. And if you go back and look at the initial 50 or so issues of the first Punisher monthly book, were almost all written by Mike Baron, who did the same kind of stories that Garth Ennis did with the Punisher, but because Mike Baron has the wrong politics and doesn't have an accent, of course, the Rich Johnstons of the world don't treat it as the greatest thing since sliced bread. And the Punisher half of that crossover with Daredevil over tracking down a fictionalized Chicago Tylenol murderer is drawn by Wolf Portatio, so it's absolutely amazing. And also some of those earlier issues of the monthly Punisher that has Klaus Janson working on them was a multi-issue arc that's about the Punisher being brought in to try and track down somebody who was taken overseas to be a part of a thinly veiled caricature of Jonestown's of Jim Jones's cult down in Jonestown in Guyana. But because it's Mike Baron, it's actually portrayed factually. It's the most factual portrayal of Jim Jones and Jonestown. So to find a factual portrayal of Jim Jones, you have to go to a fictional Marvel supervillain in a Punisher comic book, where they accurately portray Jim Jones as a socialist. And there's multiple references to this fictionalized Jim Jones as a socialist political leader. And instead of doing everything they can, like what the press has been doing ever since then, to completely absolve and remove all the details of Jim Jones being pro-Soviet and a socialism advocate, and how he had his Jonestown followers following him all the way into voting and trying to get new recruits to register to vote and to register as Democrats to go and try and rig elections in San Francisco in the name of Democrats. Little details about Jim Jones's life that you would not be able to know about unless you track down a biographical resource or a documentary that is not being produced to go and protect Nancy Pelosi and Jerry Brown and Harvey Milk's sycophants and George Mosconi's sycophants from the truth. And yes, Marcus, sadly, both Marvel and DC are overwhelmingly left of Bernie all that time in New York. Yes. In case you wonder why, a guy with actual talent like Mike Baron, or like with Chuck Dixon, both of them who actually write stories about those characters and those established characters and not taking everything into being an excuse to rant about themselves, which is what writers like all these woke idiots or the proto-woke idiots like Anno Senti do. Hence why, look at, if you have, like I do, the Venom omnibus from the 90s, includes a Venom miniseries that was written by Anno Senti that has a thinly veiled Anno Senti self-insert who is the suddenly appearing and then never seeing from her again girlfriend of Eddie Brock in the story, who is a social worker that Eddie Brock is simping for, and he is a supporting character in his own damn comic, all about kissing up to her. And well, luckily, you've got Kelly Jones artwork to go and make up for this obvious, self-satisfaction that Anno Senti is putting into this Venom miniseries. In case you wonder why that's an era of the Daredevil comics, I would be perfectly fine with not being able to get in Epic Collection or Omnibus form and just, skip over to other periods of it. Considering most of the time with a writer like Innocenti, she was very much a prototype for how the modern DC and Marvel artists are more obsessed with how they have periods than they are with focusing on any real direct period related to the actual character. And Mark says, I remember the Tylenol murderers. I was 13 at the time. Yeah, that was somebody slipping cyanide into Tylenol bottles and then putting them on the shelves there across Chicago, and the authorities never caught him. Maybe him and the anthrax and the mail dude from the early 2000s are the same guy. And yeah, the Jim Jones was the drinking the Kool-Aid is a meme. So that's what makes it fucking hilarious whenever projecting pinkos like my father or John Oliver try to look at Trump voters and saying drinking the Kool-Aid, when if they actually knew anything other than what modern MSNBC is telling them to think rather than telling them the truth, they would see that, oh no, wait, drinking the Kool-Aid came from the Kool-Aid flavored mass suicide that a socialist cult leader was involved with. And also, it's especially funny how so much of these assholes will go and try to lie about Jim Jones and his cult was all about being evil Christians, when no, the exact religious details of what the church that Jim Jones was running would go and vacillate all over the place, to suddenly going from saying shit that was Catholic dogma to Presbyterian to then suddenly gospel or Baptist, and none of it being consistent. The actual use of scripture or whatever denominations would be completely fluid and in flux at all times. But what was always rhetorically consistent with Jim Jones and his preaching was whatever it would be to use scripture to advocate for socialism. And the real end game was socialism. And how all these idiots that will pretend Jimmy Carter was a good man, let alone a good president, will keep on telling you it was all about religion for him and not socialism, when the Jonestown Massacre audio itself, you have Jones bringing up how this is being done in the name of communism and socialism, and even some of his followers talking about how they are glad to do this in the name of communism and socialism. And of course, the famous part where one of the black female followers of Jim Jones is suggesting that they not do this and instead flee from the American authorities into Soviet Russia, which are supposed to be their friends, and that Jones referred to as heaven and called it their great place, their great salvation, and that the Soviet Union were their brothers and sisters. And that part, and especially considering how much that they all are so obsessed with everything a black woman says or does, so long as they vote Democrat, is manna from heaven. So how much the Democratic Party pretends to give a shit so much about black women. That's why their idea of a first black female vice president was a woman whose nationality and birth certificate is in multiple choice. Yes. But then at the same time, they'll go and one of the great political activists they all supported and that helped get Jimmy Carter in the White House in the mid-70s was a socialist who ignored the counter arguments and pleas of a black woman to go and have her and all the fellow black brothers and sisters there poisoned in front of her. As Weatherman brings up, I've said before, what went wrong with Marvel and DC is the president's only the care about product, but don't give a damn about quality. The artists only do just enough to get by, and the writers only care about their agenda and Antifa and have elemental level of training or abilities. I mean, elementary, yes. Hence why all these people are the type of assholes that mistake Photoshop work that's more blatant than Barack Obama's birth certificate with art. And Mark, well, who's been old enough that he lived through Carter's train wreck of administration, but is willing to attribute the peanut farmer's long and distinguished list of mistakes to incompetence rather than malice. Well, considering how much the Carter White House was complicit in installing a complete Islamic fascist puppet state into the Persian, not Muslim, nation of Iran, I highly doubt that. Here we got another bit right here. And while this artwork here is nothing super great or whatever, it's still good and still brings you into the story. And also in later issues in this epic collection, you do have things like you've got better known artists going on, like say one of the Bronze Age's great silent treasures, Val Mayerick, doing several issues of the monthly book, as well as the one shot where it's John Buscema himself collaborating with Chuck Dixon. So that match made in heaven when it comes to Punisher 90s work. It's like here's where we go with Val Mayerick right here. But then, of course, we cut in, now it's gone. And then they show, hey, customers read this, also read, but yeah, it's current year, Punisher stuff being done by Marvel. I ain't touching that shit with a 10-foot pole. And, well, also, instead of listening to whatever stupid PBS pandering bullshit that Jerry Conway's saying about the Punisher these days, instead ignore what he has to say and track down a series of novels of a character called the Executioner that were popular in the 70s. The character that Jerry Conway also is on record of saying that's what helped inspire him to come up with the Punisher in the first place when Conway was writing Spider-Man. Yes, the character was initially inspired by this character who starred in a series of pulp novels from the 70s about that's a similar origin story of the Executioner being a Vietnam vet who then goes on to who wages a one-man war on crime after his family gets caught in the crossfire of his uncle being involved with Pittsburgh-era mafiosos. And Weatherman, yes, Carter wasn't a good businessman and only got propped up by the people around him, and those people totally took advantage of him. But that is, that is also his fault. Yes, he was Biden with less brain damage. Biden with a power-hungry bitch wife instead of an auto pen, like the president who is another president that the Democratic Party worships, who was so out of it and so gone that his wife was illegally acting as president in complete violation of anything to do with the Constitution or Congress. But it's perfectly okay to violate the Constitution and ignore Congress when it's a Democrat doing it. Just ask Obama and his drone strikes. And Mark continues about Carter. His apologists are another matter, lying about the Shah's regime and covering up the Ayatollah's atrocities in an attempt to justify Carter's inaction, and the fact that fact is excusable. An atrocity only now being fixed by an actual Republican president. And yes, Biden's wife being as much of a power-hungry cunt as Rosalind Carter. And guess who was one of the most regular appearing in the church in San Francisco and advocates of Rosalind Carter? Oh, yes, Jim Jones. And Rosalind Carter loved going to Jim Jones's People's Temple in San Francisco. And whenever Razorfist does get around to dropping his own video about the truth about Jonestown, which implicates, which not only will go and implicate and tell you the truth about people like a young Nancy Pelosi, or about Jerry Brown or Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, but also Harvey Milk, and you'll see everything else involved in that and how that's all been horseshit. Although Razor has been beaten to the punch a bit because now it's been a year plus that our friend Count Dankula went and did an upload about Jim Jones as one of his absolute mad lads and talking about all of the socialism that was involved in in Jim Jones's activism and in everything he did. And of course, how you get when you go and bring in all the facts that corner all the Hassan Piker ball washers with how Jim Jones were socialists and Jim Jones was a socialist and so were the Nazis. Well, then they wind up having no other thing to do than to go and scream about how it wasn't real communism because they had a different name for their political party. Yeah, that stupid shit. The house cat in the corner who's terrified of you coming at them with the water pistol. Or in the case of Vosh, coming at you with bringing all the hard evidence of him having kiddie porn on his computer to the police, and his father's Beverly Hills Trust Fund is not going to be able to protect him anymore. And with Vosh, it's not even going to be him going into jail. That's going to be, hilarious to see and well-deserved karma. It's going to be a few weeks or so in after all the people there figure out who he is and figure out what he did. And when he is just, a sentient rape whistle, his ass is all blown out. He's got permanent throat damage from having to be an unconsenting throat goat towards all those giant black dudes who love to have themselves some fun with pedos in prison. And then also on top of that, when he doesn't have all of the narcissistic sycophants across the internet constantly pretending to adore him and telling him what he wants to hear and handing him their money, but then not only will that, the horror of that psychological withdrawal, then add in the withdrawal of him not having the Adderall and the child porn and the alcohol and all the other psychotropic drugs that he's been pumping his pathetic brain with. It will be it'll be it'll be even more sad and more hilariously well-deserved than what Chris Rock thought about Michael Jackson when Chris Rock was talking about if Michael Jackson going to jail and it'll be a few months in when he doesn't have the Crayola people to fix his face anymore and his hair is all nappy and gray. Even though Michael Jackson was innocent and he was proven innocent by a jury of his peers on all charges in record time. Unlike Vosh, if Vosh was actually ever put through the legal system, but he's about as protected because of his correct politics and his Hollywood connections as Patton Oswalt. So it would take full-on vigilante justice to go and give him what it is he deserves. It will take full-on a combination of Kyle Rittenhouse and or Elizabeth Berkley avenging her best friend in the third act of Showgirls. No, picture if Elizabeth Berkley actually is a mother in real life now, and picture her son getting abducted by Vosh, who then repeatedly rapes him, and Elizabeth Berkley goes and in real life does what she did to avenge her friend against that singer in the third act of the movie, stomping his face and screaming, "Fucker, fucker, fucker, fuck off." And Vosh is such a buttersoft bitch that one tap on the nose with the number 2 pencil is enough to make him scream and cry like Vincent D'Onofrio in Full Metal Jacket when everybody's beating him to a pulp with those bars of soap wrapped up in the towels. And yeah, Mark, another one that Razor had been talking about for a while that now finally did get dropped, being recently his video defending how Deep Space Nine was not plagiarizing Babylon 5. And yes, RJ, Vosh will be holding a lot of pockets. And Mark, yes, Vosh will be traded nightly for a pack of menthols. Not even for a pack or like one of those big long boxes, those big long cartons that have several packs in them. That he'll be such a low rent bitch, and they will want to make such an example out of him and having everybody get their chance to rape him repeatedly that they'll intentionally, out of sheer humiliation, go and make him somebody that they'll be able to go and bitch him out for like a single cigarette. Because they'll purposely want to go and pass him around for being a rich white boy that went and was not just a child porn advocate and a child porn collector, but also a serial pedophile. They'll really want to go to town and make sure. Like, it'll be a thing where the guys in there will have to go out of their way to try and control themselves to not actually kill him on the first night, while they're just like raping him so hard he bleeds to death out his asshole like Mr. Hands, or just like flat out wanting to shank the fuck out of Vosh. No, it'll be like, no. We want to make an example. We want to let him live. No, the thing that people like my father and Joe Rogan said that, but really it was a matter of they just are shit libs that hate guns when trying to go and talk about how their problem with that one UFC fighter, Cain Velasquez, trying to chase down and shoot the man who sexually assaulted Cain Velasquez's 4-year-old son is that, I hated he did it with a gun because I wanted to see him torture him slowly with his bare hands. No, you hate it because you're a shit lib who hates guns and you can't stand this big, strong Chicano MMA fighter using guns to try to go and avenge his 4-year-old son's anal virginity. That's what it was. But in the case of all these convicts right there in prison, that would be able to go and fight and get their hands on Vosh. Hopefully, eventually, sometime in the future, Vosh will eventually piss off the wrong people, where then finally he'll be allowed to be prosecuted, much like Hassan Piker eventually will. And yeah, it'll be a matter of, it'll be like a pact, like that parody of Oz that they did on Saturday Night Live when Jerry Seinfeld, where they did, it was a parody of Oz as well as a skit that was supposed to be a continuation of the Seinfeld finale, where Jerry and the rest of the main actors all end up in jail at the end. But it's they do a bit where they spoof the contest episode where him and all the other main guys on the show all try to do a vow to see who can go the longest without raping someone. It would be like that. It would be like that skit where it would be, everybody would be like, okay, now, everybody here, even Crazy Chris, the one white guy of the group, would be like, even he would be like, yes, I won't kill Vosh. I want to make sure he lives out a sentence getting raped and raped and raped like all those children that Vosh has raped. He's raped so many children that, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, even the likes of the most disgusting shit-lib news personality like a Jimmy Kimmel or an Anderson Cooper or John Oliver would look at Vosh and go, oh my God, oh my God. Can you seriously go a day without raping a child? And he'll look up and say, no. In that brain-dead, personality-deprived fake baritone that Vosh puts on, no different from that how Ethan Van Sciver's been obviously putting on a fake baritone for years on end. For anybody who remembers either the very early days of his channel or on-camera interviews that EVS did when he was still a major artist for DC, and he had this effeminate lisp that really should have been a hint as to, well, maybe those 4chan rumors aren't rumors. Maybe those people saying those things about EVS behind a pizzeria dumpster are actually true. Or as Mark says, a carton of cigarettes has 10 packs. I briefly worked at a self-service gas station back in my college days and sold many cigarettes as gas. All right, well, I've been around enough gas stations and liquor stores around the Detroit area to know that that is most definitely true. And since Mark was a Michigander, he knows what I'm talking about. But that was back in '87 when $1.25 got you a gallon of one or a pack of the other. As Mark says, good times. Yes, good times under Reagan. And Weatherman brings up, when I was going to high school, we had a cigarette machine, and they have to refill the machine every other day except for weekends, so the machine would be sold out. Well, I mean, so they expected the students to smoke. Well, and then, of course, there was all the 90s agitprop and film and TV about, smoking kills, smoking bad. And then, well, guess what? Now it's a matter of smoke, 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 so long as it's weed, bro. I thought you all said smoking was bad. Or no, maybe it's just a matter of you all are a bunch of drug addicts who, the tobacco industry, I'm guessing, is one of those industries where people, the people in those industries and those executives donate to Republicans instead of Democrats. So you wound up doing one big smear campaign for decades on end in media about smoking tobacco being so evil, while at the same time you're all a bunch of marijuana junkies who can't go a single fucking day without pot, but then have the balls to say you're not drug addicts by being so dependent on marijuana. Despite how much it impairs people's judgment and motor skills, and also how much it's irrefutably involved in auto accidents and driving fatalities. And also hello to Pumafist coming on in. That's nice. We were talking earlier about how, I'm guessing because between Marvel wanting to quietly admit that the Punisher sells better as a character than Kamala Khan or the gay-washed X-Men or any of the shit they've been doing with Spider-Man these days, there's a new Punisher Epic Collection coming out that's actually already out now, where it contains a year's worth of the Punisher from his 90s work, like issues 76 to 84, as well as a couple one-shots and a couple of his annuals. And that this was made available by Marvel now a week before the trailer for the new Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, where the big selling point is that John Bernthal is coming into the MCU movie-wise as the Punisher. He's coming back as the Punisher in this movie. Yes, John Bernthal, Kurt Angle's nephew himself. I'm not kidding. Yes, I was surprised as much as anybody else out there when Kurt Angle on his podcast had John Bernthal as a guest with the headline of how, oh yes, my nephew is the Punisher. And yeah, the fake baritone EVS has been putting on, it makes him sound even more drunk and stupid than he did before. And RJ says, at least when weed was illegal, they had to hide the smell. Now they stopped hiding their junkie lifestyle. I know from experience, considering the neighbors I had for the longest time before me, which was this like huge family that also was illegally renting out the basement to like other people. It showed for all the talk about how all the the harebrained theater kid, inane thinking, and Daily Show level political takes that South Park was guilty of for years on end, despite how much that they constantly were lied about, making fun of everybody equally, and they mock both sides when no, they didn't. Don't forget about their horseshit defense of how, oh, let's just make weed legal without the medical marijuana details because making anything illegal just leads to black markets, man. That stupid shit. Well, guess what? I live next door to a huge family that obviously was selling weed out the fucking yin-yang, despite the legalization of marijuana around here. That up and down 8 Mile, basically you can make a game out of spot the weed dispensaries, spot the body shops, and spot the strip clubs when you go up and down 8 Mile. And the thing is, the weed dispensaries now are in more volume than the body shops here in the Motor City. I'm not kidding. And yeah, right next door, there was that stench of marijuana almost night and day. That's only stopped when they moved out. And now this old former auto worker who retired got this house and, lets me use his lawnmower when it's the spring and summer has come on in. And now that smell stopped. Although still you can be out and around. I can be going through one neighborhood or another. And that stench, that foul stench is right there. The foul stench where it takes all of my motor skills and self-control to then immediately start having a diet of nothing but Taco Bell and Funyuns and laughing like a Canadian commie moron. And yes, Mark adds into that saying, pot-related accidents have increased exponentially, a fact predicted by anyone with a brain, yet was conveniently ignored during the legalization boom. Just like how all those wrestling soy boy smart marks who treat Sable like the scum of the earth, but constantly and still simp for Sonny, even though Sonny now is serving time for being a fucking murderer. Yeah, the fact that when she was busted, she had an illegal amount of marijuana as well as alcohol in her system. Well, they'll go and bring up the alcohol part, but not the marijuana part, because all these lefty soy boy shitheads that will have more positive things to say about Chris Benoit, the murderer, than Vince Russo, are also a bunch of Bolshevik potheads. So, of course, these people who get their politics dictated to them by Family Guy punchlines and Daily Show rants are not going to go and ever, bring up anything that would imply marijuana does anything to kill anybody. So the next time you go and are reminded of, anytime Bill Maher or Seth MacFarlane would go on some tirade that talked about how, weed never kills anybody, it's never hurt anybody. Well, besides the marijuana trade being drenched in as much blood as any other drug trade, and child trafficking and child abuse, and the abuse and sexual commodification and gang rape of women as any other drug trade, oh yeah, you really don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You just want to smoke pot to numb the physical and psychological pain of not getting to fuck any hot girls in high school. So you've been desperately trying to get in symbolic revenge on all those girls ever since then by becoming rich and famous, and peddling that rich and fame to that fame and those riches into getting all the revenge fucks and all the cheerleaders and queen bees that never looked you in the eye. Yet you've been constantly lying to yourself about how they were constantly dedicated to belittling you and humiliating you. But no, they weren't. They were too busy having lives to ever look you in the face, let alone acknowledge your presence. That's just some of that Hollywood Munchausen syndrome and delusional narcissism about how, every other, still a trope, an old Hollywood trope that they'll still put in, they'll just put a more SJW tinge on it in modern TV or film, where every jock and every cheerleader and every pretty girl, every queen bee is all portrayed as, demonic, as pure demons who are entirely just out doing everything are out of jealousy of the blatant self-inserts for the screenwriters. I mean, shitty Buffy fan fiction, Buffy itself, let alone shitty Buffy fan fiction like Jennifer's Body, anyone? Where clearly Megan Fox's character is all built around what happens when every little woke bitch writes a villainess where they're just a dumb as fuck, fake ass skanko who hates the female protagonist that looks and talks suspiciously like the female writer for no reason, and all they want to do is steal their man. Like how women in Hollywood like Tina Fey constantly preach feminism all the time, but when it comes to any woman that's prettier, happier, more popular, and blonder than them, they're all a bunch of evil, dumb, promiscuous skankholes whose only chance at redemption for the crime of being more popular and pretty than them in life is accepting the obvious Tina Fey self-insert as a friend. Plus, they're always dumb as fuck. And, Tina Fey, for all of her self-aggrandizing about how dare any women go and vote Trump in 2016, well, bitch, you definitely were complicit in some casting couch shenanigans between you obviously sleeping with Lorne Michaels to get your unearned push into being a big major cast member of Saturday Night Live, but also that, little joke on the show you starred and were the head writer of 30 Rock, where one of the many if a man wrote a female character this way, you'd call them sexist, dumb blonde slut trope with Jane Krakowski's character, where you have her say in an episode, "Oh, I'm not intimidated. I turned down intercourse with Harvey Weinstein 3 times out of 5. Just like a great male feminist who can't stop shitting on women in Hollywood who obviously turned down his sexual advances through Family Guy cutaway gags, Seth MacFarlane, who at the Oscars nominee ceremony for the year where he failed badly, worse than David Letterman at hosting the Oscars, he went and after they announced the Best Supporting Actress award nominees, he said, "And now, women, you no longer have to pretend to find Harvey Weinstein attractive." It's almost as if everybody fucking knew. While Emma Stone is standing right next to him in that ceremony and looking at him like, "Motherfucker, don't say that out loud." Blowing him is the reason I'm able to somehow be a multi-Oscar winning actress, even though I'm a bony millennial hipster Diane Keaton fangirl who owes the start of my career to Judd Apatow comedies. But don't ever, bring that up to Emma Stone in between her acting out the groomer masturbatory fantasies of Eurotrash freak directors, making shit like Poor Things, where if the director of a movie that is all about doing Bride of Frankenstein fan fiction, where the Bride of Frankenstein has a child's brain in an adult woman's body and has several sexually graphic S&M related sex scenes, if it was a director who didn't have an accent and had a tinge of heterosexuality, all of those same film critics would be bringing that rules for thee but not for me energy they brought to all of their paranoid, narcissistic, lying, negative reviews of Sound of Freedom. They might as well have just gone and 3,000 times typed the word QAnon, QAnon, QAnon over and over and over again like they're fucking Nicholson in The Shining. And yes, funny how leftists who want pot legalized and say that banning it will just create a black market don't want to apply that same logic to guns, even though in every city from Chicago to LA to New York City that has all of those DNC paradise gun control laws, you have the most gun violence that is only there because you have criminals getting those guns illegally, and law-abiding citizens they'll be the ones getting arrested for breaking the law, for going and defending themselves without following an insane amount of loopholes. And even in Florida, where they still use the medical, fig leaf as a surprising number of pot dispensaries cropping up these last 2 years. Sorry, no turning productive members of society to burnt out losers who can't survive without government handout definitely constitutes harm. Even if leftists need more of these people to vote. Annual Weatherman's allergic to THC, so he never got into it, but he was never interested in hippie lettuce either. And Mark says, I never tried either, even though my college stage a pro-pot demonstration in the middle of campus every April 1st. And then also I'd like to remind you that University of Michigan is also a school that wound up having blacks-only internet spaces for students under the guise of BLM advocacy, when no, that's just how modern black race hustling is just found an SJW approved of way to reinstill the segregation and racial divisions that the Obama White House was built upon. But don't say that, don't say that truth out loud to Jon Stewart, or else he'll get really mad. And these are always from the same assholes of, well, how can you talk about this when you don't know anything? Yeah, from the same people to whom, if you applied that logic about marijuana to something that that they do get told as a drug to dislike cocaine, well then yeah, try that to cocaine, or apply that to fentanyl. How can you be so against a fentanyl if you've never tried any? That bring that same energy to marijuana. That is comparing apples to apples. That's not changing the subject or doing deranged bad faith hypotheticals like Vosh does when he wants to advocate for pedophilia by saying, what if aliens? He has to go and invoke aliens coming to Earth and making you perform pedophilia. Because he's that fucking desperate and has that little ability to actually develop intellectually sound arguments for his advocacy. And also, hello to forever right there. Nice right there. And yes, RJ says, I would say I identify as black and use the internet space to drop N-bombs. Or in those same internet left-wing spaces, you can go and drop all the M-bombs you want if you're a white person, so long as you're a white liberal lashing out at black people for voting Republican. Like what is always the case, just look at all of the TDS suffering comic book whisper network shit for brains that screech about inclusivity, and then the second they saw a black man with an actual audience and actual creative motivation to make actual superhero characters like Eric July come in from the Ripperverse, they were all using their secondary social media accounts to drop N-bomb after N-bomb after N-bomb on this guy. And don't you fucking deny it. Just like how, when it came to all of them defending and excusing our DNC for all of his Islamic-fueled anti-Semitic bullshit he was putting into X-Men comics, and he got to go and explain himself to the HQ over at Marvel. Even though if you damn well know that somebody wearing a crucifix that had my skin tone went and sketched in some scripture that said something that the far left doesn't agree with, they would go and nail me to that crucifix around my neck in a New York minute. And we all know that is as irrefutably true as transgender children do not exist. Yes, and I can't stand when people use weed as a way to have a personality. It's almost as bad as the soy-filled, pink-haired millennials to whom their personality was Harry Potter or Buffy the Vampire Slayer. In a lot of the cases, both. Those poor, unfortunate souls in the late 90s and early 2000s to whom worshiping Harry Potter and anything produced and written by Joss Whedon substituted actually having any kind of real reason to live. Although, as we've seen from the judgment questioning tastes of The Critical Drinker and Mahler, and how both of them are under the delusion that Joss Whedon had any talent as a writer, and well, credit where it's due to Yahtzee of The Escapist, when he went and there was that podcast appearance he made where he talks about how he's hated everything Joss Whedon's ever done. And he's on this podcast. It's like an Australian gamers podcast with some guy who thinks Whedon is a god because he is an idiot. And he brings up, okay, well then tell me a Joss Whedon line that you like. He tells them a line and he says, okay, now is there a single Joss Whedon character that can say that and it sounds out of character? The man has no sense of character voice. He is a terrible, smug writer, and I hate him. And how much that definitely Joss Whedon has his place alongside the likes of Jon Stewart in ruining a generation of writers and journalists into thinking a narcissistic miasma that reads like the dream journal of Karl Marx and Daria, all wrapped up in one self-insert power fantasy somehow constitutes good writing or good journalism. Yeah, you can really thank, that Whedon bullshit for that. Forbes says, I like Buffy and Harry Potter, never made either my personality. Well, good. We don't have, so in Forever's case, we don't have that, Disney adult who fries their brains on pharmaceutical drugs and on Tumblr fan fiction and fan art of Buffy and or Harry Potter. Unlike every other millennial asshat to whom, anytime they look at comic book art that isn't Steven Universe fan fiction done with shitty Photoshop or with some digital tablet, their only response is the same NPC ranting about, where are her organs? They're not covered in gravy and medical marijuana and other drug addictions you have that cultivate body fat. You stupid cunt. And hello to Nick. We got Nick right in here. He's waiting, everybody. Everybody say hello to Nick. Hello, and also, when we were showing off the new Punisher Epic Collection that just was put on the shelves there by Marvel last week, we can thank Nick because he actually just recently just messaged me to say that there is a copy of that Punisher Epic Collection coming my way. So thank you, everybody. Thank Nick for that. That'll be coming. It should be coming within, Tuesday. No, it's Wednesday, so yeah, it should be arriving Friday. I'll be glad to go unbox that beauty and dig into that because that's a whole era of the Punisher during that, mid-90s era of when he was towards the end of his initial run. Where, yeah, his first monthly title ran for about 100-something issues. Then there was the War Journal being a second monthly and War Zone is third monthly. They all had one big crossover event that's where they went and canceled all of them and then launched with a new number one that ran for like 18 or so issues during that whole Marvolution. And then with Marvel ending the Marvolution and going bankrupt, that's when they canceled that second volume of The Punisher and did the relaunch as one of the launch titles for Marvel Knights, where it was a 4-issue miniseries with Bernie Wrightson being involved, and the Punisher was brought back from the dead as a supernatural character that only lasted for that 4-issue miniseries that people talk about as being pure crap. And I've actually been interested in that because between loving the Punisher, but also because I love Bernie Wrightson, and seeing that first Marvel Knights Punisher series has Bernie Wrightson involved, tracking that one down wherever that is, because that's out of print and hard to find, would be great. Because, yeah, they had that, and then they waited till the coast was clear, and then in 2000 came the Garth Ennis Welcome Back Frank 12-issue series they did that was so well received. It's what led to the monthly Marvel Knights Punisher that ran for 30-plus issues, then ended, and then they relaunched the Punisher with Garth Ennis still writing him into the Max line, where he could go and completely be off in his own world away from Earth 616 totally. Although there was, a grittier version of Nick Fury involved, and him and Microchip were the only other like established Marvel mainstream universe characters that would really appear. Weatherman says, if they spent the amount of time on the internet towards their bodies, they'd have no problems with getting relationships. Yes. Like, things like literally any form of exercise that doesn't involve make homemade explosives and trying to cave in the heads of people that dare to go and enforce America's immigration laws. I mean, as much as I like, say like Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, it still would probably be better for a lot of people where instead of, glued in front of this computer screen, playing that all day long, hell, I mean, just playing military to playing military, apple to apple, if they went and, went into like a paintball place and did that. Yeah. And that's why I actually I don't make fun of LARPing, because at least with LARP, people are going outside and interacting with humans. It requires a lot more physical activity and a lot more social skills than being just being stuck in front of the computer screen playing Diablo. Even with things like the famous lightning bolt video. Yeah, that guy that then wound up, appearing on Tosh.0, the lightning bolt LARPer. Lightning bolt. Lightning bolt. Lightning bolt. That guy who, in his Web Redemption interview, it turned out he served in the Navy. Yes. And that moment, you just see the look of surprise and horror on Daniel Tosh's face when the guy mentions having served in the Navy. And he's like, that's the same response everyone else has when I bring that up. Yes, and that portrait down there is the Marquis de Sade, based off of the actual like pen and ink portrait that you see of the Marquis de Sade when you Google image him. It's like the standard like lithograph style pen and ink illustration. What's going on this page? Well, this one is the main image is Fiona walking like this with all these other smaller open panel kind of illustrations showing her moving around the third floor of this castle that the issue is taking place in, but through different perspectives and angles. Like here is straight downward, and then we've got this one a little more 3/4 this way, and another where that one's intentionally elliptical, and then we've got another, down there. Yes. The Spanish merchant family that owns and built this castle centuries ago have been, bringing in people all over, all the most important politicians and business people of the European Union countries have been coming here to act out all of their Epstein-style sex rituals and perversions. And the family that runs this, that owns and operates this castle, have their own religion that they'll indoctrinate these people into. That is their own religion modeled on the fiction of the Marquis de Sade. Yes, replacing the Bible and the books of the Bible with the likes of, Juliet or the 120 Days of Sodom. Yes. Yes. Might have been a stress-related issue for Lightning Boy. Yeah, if you've never seen that, I'll show you. It's a like 20-minute clip of the Lightning Bolt LARPer. Lightning Bolt LARP, yeah. Yeah, this is 20 years ago was when this was uploaded. It's got 20 million views. That's how long ago it is. From this channel called Sex Dwarf. Yes. And well, if you wanted to see what I was saying, what you were saying earlier about Razor Fist, here's the new one he did about Babylon 5.
I've been covering Star Trek Deep Space Nine longer than the show is on the air. But even before all that, one narrative remained pervasive in the most noxious, nerdy tracts of the interwebs. Did you know DS9 ripped off Babylon 5?
Did the writers and producers of Star Trek Deep Space Nine copy many of the ideas and concepts of Babylon 5? There does seem to be an uncanny resemblance between the two shows.
Straczynski was livid. He was quick at the time to point out what he thought were quite specific similarities between the two shows.
Ever since that show debuted, fans have been arguing over the question, is Star Trek Deep Space Nine actually a ripoff of Babylon 5?
And before you write this off as a mere nerd slap fight, remember the mockery attendant to the accusation itself actually found its way into the script of a Babylon 5 episode.
I mean, we're not some deep space franchise. This station is about something.
The allegation goes a little something like this. In or around the last year we had a civilization, 1989, one J. Michael Straczynski approached Paramount, then owners of the Star Trek franchise, with the idea for a sci-fi show set on a space station. He forked over a single episode pilot and prospective series Bible and waited. 9 months elapsed. Paramount returned the script and materials to Straczynski, saying in summation, "We'll pass." 24 months later, give or take, Commander Sisko's suddenly helmet his own space station near a wormhole amid the looming threat of interstellar war. So is this a case of commercial plagiarism, something similar to what The Witcher did to the Elric series, as elucidated in my hour-long examination on that topic? It appears the autismal expanse of the internet has already decided.
So the obvious move was to set the new show aboard a space station. And wouldn't you know it, Paramount had a detailed treatment for a sci-fi series set aboard a space station still in its files from when Straczynski pitched them Babylon 5.
So let's go ahead and run down a list of some of the major similarities between the two shows. After a certain point, this just becomes laughably ridiculous, as some of it is just downright disgraceful.
I tend to think Straczynski had it right back in the 90s. A new Star Trek show went into development to be set aboard a space station, and some executive at Paramount who knew about the Babylon 5 pitch passed along some suggestions inspired by that pitch.
Well, there it is. Open and shut. Unless it turned out that, say, I don't know, the original pitch wasn't for a space station Star Trek show, and in fact it was originally going to be set in a colony down on a planet that at one point would have been located on a floating landmass, dated production sketches for which place it as late as 1992. So if Star Trek stole the idea of a space station show, why were they paying production artists to make an entirely different idea that evolved from a village on a random rim world, evolved into a mining colony inside an asteroid, before only later evolving into what would become Deep Space Nine? And this bullshit blade slices both ways, because in the original series Bible for Babylon 5, the station wasn't even near a wormhole. By your flawed logic, did they therefore rip off DS9? But what were the nefarious directives of this nameless executive?
Straczynski speculates about what the Paramount execs might have thought. Quote, okay, open the file drawer. Let's take a peek at what they're going to do. We won't copy it exactly, but knowing what they're doing will allow us to co-opt a little of their franchise, enough to cut them off at the knees in the marketplace. We won't tell Berman or Pillar about this because they would never go along with it, but we'll just guide them here and there.
And I can obviously understand why many people viewed what happened as unethical, because it...
Biggest problem with Dave Cullen's content, the millennial Irish soy boy accent. Every other Irish YouTuber or UK YouTuber has the same type of soy-based accent. No wonder they all need cartoon avatars for their channel, or they just narrate. Because the face you would expect to go with that testosterone-deprived voice is so fucking obvious. I could draw it from memory without not knowing what they actually look like.
was Straczynski's work was clearly copied.
You see, as the DS9 Wikipedia article recounts, in quotation of Straczynski's own website, while he didn't believe producers Michael Piller and Rick Berman had stolen the idea outright, without a doubt, an executive, meaning probably the CEO, had. Sounds downright demonic, don't it? An occult cabal of shadowy visaged Persian cat-stroking Bond villains bankrolling a Star Trek show, quietly directing its development with its actual creators, none the wiser. But what if a dashingly handsome YouTuber in a wicked set of sunglasses just peeled back the velvet curtain an inch or so and revealed the names of said executives, say by doing a 5-second internet search for such? Why, what if that same executive, a man by the name of Brandon Tartikoff, was one of the most famous men in all of Hollywood, having greenlit in short order Seinfeld, Miami Vice, Cheers, Saved by the Bell, Knight Rider, Cosby, and a crushing litany of all-time classic TV shows that were, at the moment of Deep Space Nine's development at Paramount, positively printing money? What if I told you that Brandon Tartikoff's first order of business upon assuming the reins as CEO of CBS and Paramount was to pitch an all-new Star Trek show to his creative staff, right on down to the colony concept? And what if I told you that when Babylon 5 was being pitched to Paramount in 1989, Brandon Tartikoff didn't work for them? In fact, the only time he might have been made aware of the existence of a Babylon 5 Bible, he was, at that very moment, working for Paramount CBS's direct competition, NBC.
And also, I'd like to make a little addendum, something that's not brought up here, but yes, all of this about revolving around having to assume that Brandon Tartikoff would lie and cheat and steal like this, and backstabbing people like this, when Brandon Tartikoff was the same man who was so directly involved in the creation of the show Punky Brewster back in the day, that the title character of the show was named after a girl he knew growing up, who then he went and tracked that girl down to get approval of using her name as the title character for the show, and even got her to appear in the pilot of that fucking show. So involved was Tartikoff in the production of the show that even the title character's dog was named Brandon. But when it comes to this, he's going to go and be a sneaky butthole. Wrong. Not that Brandon Tartikoff also wasn't dead wrong about certain things, like how famously when it came to the casting of Michael J. Fox on Family Ties, the producers of the show had to really go and fight with Tartikoff over that, because Tartikoff was quoted as saying, "That's not the type of face that you would put on a lunchbox." And then a few years into Family Ties, where Michael J. Fox was the breakout star of the show, including Alex B. Keaton merchandising like lunchboxes, Tartikoff got sent one with a note attached to it saying, "This is for you to put your crow in." And also going back to him greenlighting Seinfeld, the people involved in Seinfeld had to argue with Tartikoff over getting the show produced and picked up, because Tartikoff thought that Seinfeld was too New York and too Jewish to appeal to a wide audience. And it being one of the highest rated shows of the 90s wound up proving him wrong, although at the very same time, easily led automatons who think what they're told to by Howard Stern, like my father, are convinced that Seinfeld's only successful because Jerry Seinfeld went on Howard Stern to promote it, and then it got big and Seinfeld abandoned Howard Stern. No, he didn't. You're a liar and an idiot who likes or hates or believes whatever Howard Stern tells you to. No different from whatever a Democrat president tells you to.
Not becoming chairman of Paramount until July of 1991, over a year and a half after J. Michael Straczynski admits his series Bible had been returned to him already. What, did outgoing chairman Frank Mancuso have photocopies made of a series he didn't think was good enough to produce to begin with? Did he drop Brandon Tartikoff a dime on Babylon 5 on his way out the door to sue Paramount for breach of contract, which he absolutely did, by the way? So to summarize, for Straczynski's version of events, as well as most of YouTube, to be possible, let alone truthful, CBS, Paramount, and their direct competitors at NBC would have all had to conspire in unison to steal an idea that was so jaw-droppingly brilliant, so ripe for creative plunder, Paramount passed on it. And then there's the elephant dung in the room. In looking over his career, not to mention his social media feeds around the time of Donald Trump's election, let's just say J. Michael Straczynski has a negotiable relationship with the truth. There's no need to saunter into politics town and discuss the proven falsehoods he forwarded during COVID or the 2016 election. Rather, let's reserve ourselves to something
or other shit that J. Michael Straczynski has done since then, like how famously the writer Harlan Ellison was noted as saying that any unfinished work of his as a writer would be destroyed and never be published in any form upon his death, including a long unpublished short story collection that Ellison had been editing called The Last Dangerous Visions, which was something that people were wanting to see get published for years on end, but Ellison never did in his lifetime. And you would think that, oh yes, other famous unfinished prose writings of Ellison as he ordained would be destroyed upon his death by his secretaries as per what Ellison had left in his will, except then, not too long ago, guess what wound up getting published under the supervision and editorialship of J. Michael Straczynski? The Last Dangerous Visions. So this writer who JMS went and built so much of his personality around being friends with, seriously, if you look at interviews and look at correspondences and all that, J. Michael Straczynski's relationship to Harlan Ellison is like that impression of Keenen Ivory Wayans used to do on Living Color of Arsenio Hall, where he finds every single fucking chance he can to remind you that he's friends with Eddie Murphy. And yet, wanting to go and you'd think honoring his friend and his friend's will and legacy and wishes. Nope. Not only does he not do that, he goes and has The Last Dangerous Visions published against the directly, explicitly stated wishes of Harlan Ellison and the public, but then also goes and supervises the reprinting of several different story collections of Ellison with little sensitivity reader trigger warning prologues talking about how these stories are insensitive, but they were a product of the time they were written in. That sort of soy-based politically correct dogma, yeah, fuck you. In case you wonder why I am dead set on trying to get my hands on the original Ian Fleming James Bond books, but why I'm definitely making sure that it is anything but a contemporary printing of those books, knowing how much like with the movies, the Ian Fleming classic works have all now had altered text for the sake of current year California commie bullshit, mostly because of how much the original Ian Fleming Bond stories repeatedly bring up the Soviet Union and communism as antagonists, something that definitely contradicts a Vosh rant or two. Because yes, making sure that we conform to the politically correct dogma of a guy like Vosh who loves horse dicks and raping children and child porn is more important than someone with actual talent and creativity who actually served his country valiantly in intelligence and in the military like Ian Fleming. Stupid fucking woke man.
Something much more germane to the topic, foremost of which being, where's the proof? We have Straczynski's word and endless implication of a backroom conspiracy to crib Babylon 5's homework and pass it off as Trek. But beyond the fact that the timeline don't match, where's the hard evidence? Studio notes showing Star Trek stole the idea. For this to be factual, everyone from the production designers to the producers would have needed to be apprised, particularly during the production process. Yet not only is Straczynski not furnished that, the available materials featuring the likes of DS9 production designers Mike Okuda and Herman Zimmerman emphatically prove they were moving in an entirely different direction.
And one of the things that they really wanted is they wanted not to look Starfleet. They wanted us to make it look weird. They didn't particularly care if it was not understandable, which is a very interesting take on it. So based on that, we took the license to try to come up with things as strange as we possibly could.
Well, since we didn't have any solid information on who built the space station in the early weeks, we didn't have a good idea of the style. It was during a meeting, a production meeting for Star Trek Next Generation, that actually began doodling on the script cover went back to the office and began doodling additional concepts.
The initial concept was largely based on an oil rig with some terracing from a shopping mall with slips and docks. We came up with a model that I was very proud of. Rick Berman said something that infuriated me at the time, but turned out to be brilliantly insightful. He said, at its core, it has to be a simple design that an 8-year-old child can draw, and you know what it is.
So that's the direction we went.
And this brings up another pertinent point. In the nearly 3 decades.
Well, everybody wish Weatherman a good night right there. Since it's going to go back to laying down, let's all enjoy. Let's all thank Weatherman and hope that he, let's see him get back to sleep in style. Have a good time there. Hope you had a good time here. Enjoy it, enjoy it, enjoy it. Thank you for coming around. Everybody wish the man good night for the continued support he brings to the channel and all the good times he brings around here. He helps bring in a type of audience that is definitely not like dealing with the nerd-rotic crowd, which is great because we actually do things around here besides bitching about Star Wars. And I increasingly pride myself on that. And Weatherman just gifted a channel membership on his way out, so he definitely knows how to bring a good time around these parts. Oh, it's magic. And hello to Donnie.
Since DS9 ended, Paramount has suffered multiple bankruptcy scares, the ongoing...
I've not seen the Spider-Man trailer yet. Not at all.
upheaval at Viacom, the Les Moonves scandal, Michael Pillar's untimely death, and complete and utter shit-canning of the prior Star Trek producers Rick Berman and company in favor of Alex Kurtzman and Secret Hideout. Actors, writers, directors, and producers have engineered multiple walkouts and strikes due to unpaid royalties and even salaries. In short, all the incentive in the world for former DS9 actors, writers, or producers to drop a dime and say, hey, by the way, we bit off Babylon 5 back in the day, if only to twist the shiv in their robber baron boss's ribs. Instead, not only has no one said any such thing, they've repeatedly intimated the exact opposite. When asked about the show doing long arcs, and I quote, like Babylon 5, writer Ronald D. Moore replied, we're just doing the show the way we want it. DS9 showrunner Ira Stephen Bear replied, we were too busy to watch other TV shows, let alone copy them. Almost 3 decades and not a peep. But then out of nowhere in 2013, we received that apparent peep. IO9 dropped a random retrospective on Babylon 5, and it was reasonably rote fare, rightly praising its pioneering long-form stories and innovative use of CGI. But the comments section of the article held the real story. A man claiming to be a former employee at Warner Brothers named Stephen Hopstaken finally dropped the dime many a man-tittied uber nerd had been mouth-breathing for. Quote, I was working at Warner Brothers in the publicity department when Warner Brothers and Paramount were preparing to launch a joint, emphasis mine, network. Warner Brothers already decided to buy Babylon 5 for their ad hoc PTN network, a group of independent stations that agreed to show Warner Brothers shows in prime time. Paramount and Warner Brothers both agreed that Deep Space Nine would be the show that would launch the new network, and there wouldn't be room for 2 space shows on the network. I was told they purposely took what they liked from the B5 script and put it in the DS9 script. In fact, there was talk of leaving the B5 script intact and just setting it in the Star Trek universe. I had to keep rewriting press release drafts while they were trying to make the final decision. But then, suddenly, Paramount decided to launch a new network on their own and screwed Warner Brothers over. That sent Warner Brothers scrambling to create their own network, grabbing up any station not already committed to Paramount and getting WGN to show the WB network on cable. So Paramount definitely knew about the Babylon 5 script. I don't know about the DS9 showrunners, but I find it hard to believe they didn't know. unquote. The story went stratospheric, being cross-promoted everywhere from IGN to Newsarama, immediately after which Straczynski himself linked to the comment with an attached remark saying simply, interesting. In essence, underwriting the accusation. Well, there it is. Informant located. There's just one tiny problem.
It never happened.
So let's break this down. J. Michael Straczynski's entire claim hinges on the idea that Paramount and Warner Brothers were in the process of collaborating on launching a new television network together, with the Paramount half of that partnership being erect, nipple-cuttingly keen on doing so with a brand spanking Star Trek show. And if that scenario sounds familiar, then you already likely know why this guy's story is bubbling bullshit. As we all know, not only were Warner and Paramount not planning a joint network, they would in fact launch competing TV networks within 2 years of the DS9 premiere, machinery that would have had to be in place well before Babylon 5's pitch in 1989. And as with all Straczynski stories, there's yet another slag, however. Despite claiming WB and Paramount were planning a network in 1990, that would have actually been illegal at that time due to existing FCC regulations on syndication. Those laws, the ones that would have even allowed UPN and WB to exist at all, didn't get voted on and passed until 1993, several months after DS9 debuted. So either two titanic networks were working on a joint venture federal law forbade, pissing away millions of the process on a TV channel that never launched, or for the 500th damn documented time, J. Michael Straczynski is once again lying. Indeed, when Paramount did finally launch a network without Warner's help in 95, it wouldn't be with DS9, but a little piece of magic called Star Trek Voyager. By itself, the timetable proves the plagiarism hypothesis. But when you get out into the weeds and discuss the similarities between the shows, the shit really flies fanward. Straczynski's chief complaints? 1, it's a space station show. 2, it's a space station show near a wormhole. 3, it's no shit, a space station with a number in the title. And 4, it features shapeshifters. So for starters, we already slapped down point number 1. DS9 didn't even start as a space station show.
It seemed we had a choice between doing another spaceship, doing a space station, or doing a colony on another planet. And we actually explored the colony idea for quite a while. I think we even had some sketches made of what it might look like. We had the idea of a frontier town. If Star Trek was Wagon Train, we said, well, what about Gunsmoke? Let's do Gunsmoke. And so we looked at what it would take to produce that. And ultimately, we rejected it because of we'd have to go out to locations every day, and we had had such good fortune under the controlled environment of studio production that seemed awkward.
And even once it was a space station, the closest it ever came to resembling Babylon 5 was a brief period during the design process when it too rotated to generate gravity. An idea so unoriginal, Werner von Braun invented it in the 50s. Hell, I remember reading about it in issues of 321 Contact as a kid, years before either of these series even existed. Point number 2, they're both near a wormhole. Sounds legit, but collapses like the Three Gorges Dam when you realize, number 1, Babylon 5 originally wasn't, and number 2, the earliest inklings of a wormhole-related storyline preceded not only DS9, but Babylon 5 being pitched to Paramount. The phenomenon being prominently featured not only in multiple episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, but the original Star Trek motion picture from 1979. Indeed, the idea of a stable wormhole as prop and plot device for purposes of commerce and military advantage was already the centerpiece of season 7 TNG episode The Price, original air date November 3rd, 1989, more or less simultaneous with when Hakinski claims they cribbed his idea. And if you think they wrote and filmed that episode the same day it aired, I got a badly upscaled Babylon 5 Blu-ray box set to sell you. What am I saying? That's every Babylon 5 Blu-ray box set.
Oh, I made myself sad.
Point number 3 makes me laugh so hard I like piss in every direction. The idea must have been stolen because both space stations have a number in the title. In reply to which I can only say, Gene Roddenberry must have had a wicked premonition back in 1967 that a 13-year-old J. Michael Straczynski was going to dream up that idea, because the space station featured in the Trouble with Tribbles episode was Deep Space K7. How's about you buy some Deep Space KY and jam your fakey plagiarism allegation up your ass, J. Mike?
Babylon 5 doesn't have much in the way of space exploration. Deep Space Nine, on the other hand, is still a Star Trek show at heart, so there's plenty of exploring strange new worlds.
Funny you should mention that, Steve-O, because while it is true DS9 eventually incorporates slightly more exploration into the series, it's the vehicle through which that exploration emerges, a glorified gun with engines attached named the USS Defiant, that presents one of the most obvious, actual, and only outright proven examples of a ripoff between the two shows to date. But unfortunately for your hastily stapled together narrative, it's not the Star Trek creative team, but Babylon 5's who admitted to ripping off the USS Fuck Around and Find Out when they introduced a space roaming vessel of their very own, the White Star. In an interview with SFX magazine in '95, Babylon 5 CGI director Ron Thornton said of the White Star, "Oh, it's a cool ship for the crew to get around in, like," and I quote, "the Defiant on DS9. When asked by the SFX reporter if he was allowed to say that, Thornton simply replied, "I'll say what I want." Point number 4 is strained to the extreme. Every franchise from Batman to Star Trek itself had already experimented with changelings, introducing changeling actress Salome Jens as a featureless progenitor race to all the descendant races of Trek in Season 6 of TNG. And more pointedly, the Season 2 episode, The Dauphin, introduced a prototype race of changelings, the Elasmorphs.
What kind of creature is she? Never seen anything like her.
There is mention in the Galactic Zoological Catalog of a species called Elasmorph, which is supposed to possess the power to alter their molecular structure into other life forms.
Those episodes aired in 1993 and 1989, respectively. So there you have it, folks. A timeline that requires time travel, superficial similarities, in most cases pioneered not by Babylon 5 or Straczynski, but prior entries in Star Trek itself, culminating in a plagiarism case that's about as open shut as Straczynski's mouth. This video will doubtless be written off as the ravings of a DS9 fanboy, but the fact is, this ain't a defense of Deep Space Nine, it's a defense of Babylon 5, because Babylon 5 is so damn good it doesn't need internet lies to improve it. It stands just fine all on its own as a towering achievement to television, and one unremittingly influential in its own medium, movies, and thanks to a little ditty called Mass Effect, very much video games as well. Is it perfect? Fuck no. The way they turned Talia from Garibaldi's love interest into a lipstick lesbian over the course of a single episode, then wrote her out of the show like fucking Poochie, was so amateurish the script ought to have had a fucking Fisher-Price logo on it. But DS9 had its half-ass moments too, whether it's Quark's brother Rom slowly morphing into Ferengi Fidel Castro or turning Dukat into the devil, but both shows stand up impressively to repeat viewings, even if only the first 4 of Babylon 5s are actually watchable. Yet for the past 20 years, every online discussion about this banging-ass series has come with a cringy-ass compulsory interlude featuring a ludicrous plagiarism accusation about being ripped off by a rival TV show, one which is nevertheless impossible without Doc Brown and a damn DeLorean, and all while bemoaning Babylon 5's bad luck at perpetually residing in the long shadow of DS9 and the Dominion War. Bitch! It ain't Star Trek or CBS who's keeping this killer series in Cisco's shadow. It's you! Because thanks to your faggy fan fiction about B5 being ripped off, it's nigh on impossible not to mention DS9 in conjunction with it, even though I've just exposed that as an outright lie. Babylon 5 is superb, and I vociferously recommend you watch it, as it's now on YouTube, I believe, for free. But if, like me, you enjoy Babylon 5, then enjoy Babylon 5 and cease to bullshit everyone about the also excellent competition. Myth busted, bitch tits. I'm Captain Fist. Engage.
I'm Russian, Doctor.
You Jew.
A Russian Jew.
Russian and Jews is more like it. One of the biggest anti-Semites I've ever met.
Yes, and one thing also when it comes to, I remember about Babylon 5, there actually was some merchandising for it outside of, like your basic tie-in media. Who else remembers seeing the Babylon 5 micro machines? Because when it comes to production design, Babylon 5 did have some cool looking like spaceships and all that. So that was something that would be great to have or still have. And another advantage it had over other science fiction franchises before and after it was all that extraneous media is actually part of its canon to the show. Yeah, J. Michael Straczynski had such a huge like world building series Bible behind the Babylon 5 storyline that it wound up being a thing. It wound up making it a point that with doing, DC Comics had a comic book tie-in with the show. There were tie-in books. I think there was even like a role-playing game or something like that. All of the background he wrote for the whole, universe of Babylon 5 wound up being worked into the series. And by that, I mean all the other media. So, yeah, what went on in the deep Babylon 5 DC comics or what went on in the books was all a deeper part of the world. It wasn't up for debate or anything like that. Like there's a lot of, tie-in books with Star Trek or, Doctor Who or the X-Files or whatever, but that's all just some, tie-in media. But it doesn't directly tie in with the story the way that, there is a wider world out there with Babylon 5, and a lot of what you see on screen with the show is not the full story. A lot of it is there in all that other media. So you can, trying that on for size gives you the full picture of the universe that it takes place in. Let's see what else we got. Looking for something else for you all to enjoy. Actually, wait, let me go back a bit, my own history. And here we are.
Alice.
Sparkling Ice Flavor Lab, Stella speaking. Help me choose the sparkling ice. Oh, mini cans, perfect for school lunch if you have a kid.
Who says European-style horror movies are just for Europe? Americans can make them too. All you need is one creepy little girl and a lapsed Catholic director, and you're all set. Alice, Sweet Alice is a 1976 horror movie from director Alfred Soule, who previous to this had only directed the 1972 pornographic film Deep Sleep, which resulted in Soule getting charged with obscenity as well as being excommunicated from the Catholic Church. That would probably explain all the religious overtones in this one. The film was shot and originally released under the title Communion, but distributors were worried audiences would think it was a religious film and not a horror movie and changed the title to Alice, Sweet Alice. Then, a few years later, when actress Brooke Shields became famous, it was released again under the title Holy Terror, with the marketing making it look like Shields was the star, even though she's only in it for the first 15 minutes. And there's even more alternate titles. In some places, the movie was released as The Mask Murders. Well, Alice, Sweet Alice is the most popular title, so that's the one I'm going with. Even if Alfred Soule personally hated it, perhaps because of all the confusing titles, the movie was largely ignored when it was first released. Recently, it's managed to not only get a cult following, but even some genuine scholarly attention as an overlooked artistic horror film. So to find out if it deserves all the renewed attention, let's dive into Alice, Sweet Alice. Or Communion, whatever the title is. So the movie takes place in Paterson, New Jersey in 1961, although I'll admit, when I started watching, I thought for sure this was the mid-70s, not just because of all the ugly wallpaper, but because the women also have matching outfits with it. Anyway, the movie centers on the Spages family. There's divorced mother Catherine, who's taking care of her two daughters, 12-year-old Alice and 9-year-old Karen. You know what? Brooke Shields looks a lot different on the re-release posters. Karen's preparing for her first communion, and Alice is a little jealous she's getting all the attention. Not only does she get a crucifix from their priest, Father Tom, but Mom's attention is all on Karen too. Of course, there might be another reason Alice isn't too popular.
Oh! Nasty child.
Namely the fact she walks around wearing a creepy mask and scaring the housekeeper. So as I mentioned, Alfred Soule was an ex-Catholic, and as you can probably tell, religion is going to feature heavily in this story. This movie sometimes gets called an early slasher flick, but a lot of people have noted that it's actually more like an American version of a 70s Italian giallo movie. And that's not just because of all the heavy Catholic imagery. Stuff like the mood, the camera angles, and even a lot of the locations have a strong Italian horror vibe. Add some colored lighting gels and a Goblin soundtrack, and this could almost seem like something Dario Argento made back in the 70s. And that's a very giallo-esque jump scare, too. And holy shit, it's actually an old man under that mask, and oh, wait, it's just Alice.
If you tell Mommy about this, you're never going to see that doll again. Now go home!
Well, she seems on the up and up. Believe it or not, actress Paula Shepherd, who plays Alice, was actually 19 at the time of filming. Normally, I'd make my usual complaint about horror movies casting actors who are too old for the roles they're playing, but she actually pulls it off really well. If they cast her as a high schooler in a slasher flick, I'd say she looks too young.
I don't like this new habit of yours, disappearing when you're told to do something. You're old enough to know better.
Yeah, apparently she is.
Hunters, take your places.
Meanwhile, in a prequel to the gluttony part from Seven, this is the Spage's landlord. Jesus, this guy looks like the kingpin if his criminal empire consisted of some shitty apartments and a questionable hard drive. You know what? Let's just go ahead and get to Karen's first communion. I'm sure nothing creepy will happen there. Okay, looks like I was wrong. Well, great, you just killed the most famous person in this. There aren't many horror movies with the balls to kill a kid, and there's even less that make it the first kill of the movie. Even though this isn't a gory death, it's still pretty effective. It's a little girl getting strangled and then set on fire in a church, which is also a very 70s Italian horror movie style death. Don't worry, we'll still make it look like she's the star in the marketing. Well, now that Karen's dead, maybe they can ship her off to the tall man and he can turn her into a slave Jawa. Catherine's ex-husband Dominic comes for Karen's funeral, and even if they're estranged, he seems a lot more sensitive than Karen's sister Annie.
I don't want to rush you, but Mass begins at 9.
Hey, do you mind? My daughter just got turned into a smoked brisket. I think the wafers can wait a little bit. Even if Aunt Annie is a little overbearing, she decides to stay a little while. We're only 20 minutes in and we need more victims.
Alice, would you bring this down to Mr. Alfonso?
No, don't go to the fat landlord again. If I didn't already see that whoever murdered Karen was a fraction of his size, I'd swear he's the killer.
She's a pretty girl, too. Too bad she was the one to end up in the box. God always takes the pretty ones.
Okay, maybe he didn't kill Brooke Shields, but this guy definitely has some body parts in his fridge.
Wow, is he fat?
And as far as who they think did kill Karen,
The police do investigate a murder, you know.
Still don't understand what that has to do with Alice.
She had Karen's veil in her pocket.
holy shit, I think Alice might be the killer. Going with the Italian horror similarities again, Karen's death picture almost looks like it's straight out of an Italian zombie flick. They could almost make a separate movie about her coming back to life. In the meantime, though, the police are investigating Karen's murder, including one guy who looks like if Elias Codius and Harry Dean Stanton got into a teleporter accident. The cops want to question Alice, but Dominic thinks there's no way she could have done it. Well, her school records seem to think she's a psycho.
This kid's nuts.
Also, apparently she's 19? Oh, damn it. I knew I shouldn't have gotten Alice a raincoat from the Don't Look Now collection.
She called me a liar. Now I am going to hit her.
Annie, get the dustpan.
You see, she was going to hit me. It was an accident.
You know, if you ignore the child murder, parts of this don't even really feel like a horror movie. If you just randomly tuned into this at certain spots, you might think it's a drama about a grieving family dealing with a troubled child. Of course, it's not too long before things get weird again.
Could you take the rent check down to Mr. Alfonso for me?
Oh yeah, send the little girl to the creepy landlord again.
I know you're there, Alice. You can come in.
Don't come in.
I won't bite you.
Yeah, he seems more like the type of guy who swallows things whole. And please tell me that stain is just pudding.
It smells like cat's piss.
Hey, don't blame the cats. Oh, and here's a shocker. The gross fat dude is actually a creep.
Where are you going? You're not in a rush, are you? I know what you have downstairs.
All right, while most of the acting in this movie is pretty good, this guy is a little cartoonish. He's like if Divine played a slumlord. And hey, easy there, Alice. Just because I've been comparing this to Italian horror flicks doesn't mean you also have to be cruel to animals. You know, I'm beginning to suspect that Alice isn't actually that sweet. And the fact she spends her time in the basement playing with bugs and dressing like she's in an experimental new wave band isn't helping things. Still, could be worse. She could be creeping around trying to scare her aunt.
Alice!
All right, Alice, I think she's pretty scared. And if you're gonna murder somebody, go after the fat landlord. Even if this isn't super gory, the attack scenes are still pretty effective. These look genuinely painful. And there's another Giallo movie-esque touch with the ultra bright red blood that almost looks like paint. Don't worry, Aunt Annie's still alive. Although considering she got stabbed in the foot, would you mind not putting reminders of that everywhere?
Who's doing this to me? Haven't I had enough?
Well, the movie is called Alice, Sweet Alice. That'd be a good place to start. I'm just saying. I mean, Annie already seems to have decided who did it. Again, regarding people calling this a proto-slasher flick, it definitely has elements of that, but that's not the whole picture.
Avoid the flea and tick ick with 50% off your first auto ship order of flea and tick meds from Chewy Pharmacy.
Adobe Acrobat, your team's home base. Collaborate within a shared PDF space. You've got your docs, your plans, your specs, and then invite the crew to build what's next. They talk of the teamwork. Here's an updated render. They think that this design could be a contender. But when somebody wonders what's the next step, AI helps you finish the rest.
There's parts of this movie that feel like a psychological film about a mother having to come to terms with the fact that her child might be a psychopath. It's like if we saw Michael Myers' parents after the opening scene, and the rest of the movie was them dealing with having him institutionalized. To find out if Alice really is responsible, they have her take a lie detector test. Question 1. Are you really 12 years old? Alice says that it was actually Karen that attacked Annie, and even more surprisingly...
Said it was her sister. But his sister's dead. Yeah, but she wasn't lying.
Shit, maybe this really is a zombie movie. And that's not the creepiest thing about this scene.
She is a weird little girl. Did you notice her tits?
Okay, the actress might be 19, but she's playing a 12-year-old. You want to pump the brakes a bit there, Officer Polanski? Alice is sent away to a psychiatric institution for evaluation, but her parents are still convinced she's innocent.
Alice has many deep-seated problems.
But she is not a murderer.
We'll see about that. Plus, even if she isn't, you should probably still watch her around small animals. And turns out there's a lot they don't know about Alice.
Oh, Mrs. Spages, why did Alice conceal from you the fact that she's begun menstruating?
Well, it's about damn time. She's 19. There's no need for Alice to stay here. She's just a perfectly normal girl who happens to see her dead sister knifing people.
Everyone thinks I'm crazy because I said it was Karen. I saw Karen.
Look, honey, I know the marketing for the movie was misleading, but Brooke Shields isn't going to be in the movie anymore, okay? Even though all the signs and moody cinematography point to Alice, Catherine still thinks she's innocent. And Dom's got his own ideas of who could be the killer.
Why can't you see that it makes just as much sense that Angela could be guilty?
Yeah, for those of you wondering, Angela is Annie's daughter. Great job, Dom. Take the heat off your daughter and just blame your niece for everything. Also, bullshit, Angela's the one who did it.
It's a size 7. Angela's would be at least a 14.
See, Catherine agrees with me. Despite all the tragedy, though, this has really brought these two back together. Hey, is it me, or does having a potentially schizo daughter get you really hot?
Hello? It's your wife.
Ah, damn it. Don't you just hate it when you get cock-blocked by your wife?
Julia? What's wrong?
I thought you were going to call. Is everything all right?
Oh, sorry, I meant to call, but I was busy definitely not cheating on you. And don't worry, Dom, that's not going to be the only uncomfortable phone call you get today.
Oh, Dom?
Who is this?
Angela.
Angela, what's wrong?
Holy shit, I think Angela might definitely not be the killer. So Angela asked Dom to meet her near an old abandoned building. I'm sure this meeting's gonna go well. Okay, Dom, you really need to work on your detective skills. Once again, this is Angela, so unless that raincoat has a girdle built in, I don't think that's her. All right, on a serious note, so far this movie's been pretty light on jump scares, and when it does have them, they're earned jump scares. And by that I mean a non-gratuitous jump scare that occurs after a suitably effective build-up. Yeah, kind of like that. Soul said he was mainly influenced by Alfred Hitchcock, and this part is a lot like a scene from Psycho. Even the music is pretty similar. And what are you doing, you idiot? Don't keep going after her.
You don't have to be afraid of me.
Yeah, I don't think she's the one who should be afraid. See? Told you. Look, I'm sensing a bit of hostility here. You can feel safe around me. It's okay. Oh, and you know how I've been saying this isn't really a whodunit and it's obvious that Alice has been the killer this whole time? Well, guess what? I lied. That's right, the killer is Mrs. Tredoni, the housekeeper at the church rectory. This is like Psycho if Mrs. Bates really was the killer. Actually, to continue the Giallo movie comparisons, the twist of the killer actually being a little old Italian lady is kind of similar to the one in Deep Red, which came out just a year before this. Normally, a twist like this would come at the end of a movie, but we still got over half an hour left. So if you're wondering why she's doing this, Mrs. Tredoni is a devout Catholic who considers the Spages sinners because they had Alice out of wedlock and then got divorced. Also, it's never brought up, but I'll bet you they also eat meat on Fridays during Lent, too. Well, you may be about to die, but if you really want to piss her off, just take her crucifix. She stole it from Karen anyway. Again, for a low-budget movie, that was a pretty cool shot. In fact, this movie's got a lot of nice-looking shots. Sure, it's grungy and low-budget, but it's also atmospheric and well-made, too. This doesn't look like a typical drive-in horror movie from the 70s. Well, that's another murder. Better head to the confession booth and get the slate wiped clean until the next one. And don't worry, turns out Mrs. Tredoni's able to convince herself that what she's doing isn't that bad.
You have great faith.
Hand off your taxes to an expert in your neighborhood. Now, your TurboTax expert can file for you, so you don't have to miss a moment. You've got better things to do than taxes. Have a local TurboTax expert file for you.
I can't believe we're staying here.
It's because of this that you can look forward to death as a resolution. There's no greater reward than to spend eternity with our Lord.
See? She's not murdering people. She's just handing out rewards. Even though Mrs. Tredoni's been revealed as the killer, I'm not sure she's working alone. For example, just who the hell is holding up that boom mic? Joking aside, this is actually a pretty tense scene where you're almost certain that Catherine's going to be the next victim, only for her to be saved at the last minute when Father Tom comes home. Also, even though this movie's got some critiques of religion, I appreciate they didn't go the easy route and just have the priest be the killer the whole time. Meanwhile, during Dominic's autopsy, they find Karen's crucifix in his mouth, which exonerates Alice as a suspect. Although, what kind of morgue is this? The pathologist isn't even eating a sandwich off the body. By the way, if anyone still didn't know this movie has a strong Psycho influence, here you go. Alice is released from the institution, and while most of the movie so far has been focused on her, this last third switches over more to Mrs. Tredoni. Turns out her own daughter was also killed on the day of her first communion, although they don't go into detail as to how. Hopefully she wasn't also strangled and burned to death. Oh, and apparently she flicks her gnocchi to Father Tom. Despite all the dangerous homicidal repression going on here, I still maintain that the most terrifying part of this movie is all the tacky-ass wallpaper. Could we cut to something more pleasant? Oh, geez, not this guy again. This is one movie I'm really grateful isn't in smell-o-vision. On the bright side, it looks like he's about to die, either because of the killer or his massively enlarged heart. Ah, damn it, it's just Alice playing a prank. Now I wish she really was the killer. Thankfully, Mrs. Tredoni comes by to kill Alice's mom, and even though she's already left, she gets another opportunity to kill a sinner. This guy is guilty of gluttony, sloth, and probably a bunch of other shit that's a lot worse. Oh no, not the landlord. He had so much to give to the world. One of the cops also comes by and sees Mrs. Tredoni, so now he knows who the killer is. Although the mystery I want answered is just who in the hell is this guy? Well, maybe it was the same guy holding the boom mic earlier. Luckily for the police, Mrs. Tredoni's easy to track. She never misses church, even when she just got spotted committing a murder. Well, if she makes it to the confession booth before the cops nab her, she can at least be acquitted in the Lord's eyes. And what are you standing there for? Grab her already.
No, it's almost time for communion. When she comes up to receive, I know I can get her to come with Father Pat and me.
What if she doesn't come up?
Look, I know her. She'll come.
You sure about that? Nope, guess not. See, this is what happens when you don't give an old Italian lady her wine and wafers. By the way, I love how the cop is just standing there going, do I arrest her, or should we finish communion first? Well, at least now everyone knows Alice isn't the killer. Well, at least not yet, anyway. I have a feeling she's going to become one eventually, and the final shot agrees with me, too. Like I mentioned, Alice Sweet Alice originally didn't get much attention other than people mentioning it as Brooke Shields' first movie, and Alfred Soule would only direct 2 other films, Tanya's Island and Pandemonium, before spending the rest of his career as a production designer before his death in 2022.
And yeah, they mentioned Tanya's Island. That was a film he directed that was an early movie role for Vanity before she got into pop music. And it involves Vanity on an island where she winds up having a gangbang between a random man and a gorilla monster man. Yes, Vanity fucks a gorilla man on a tropical island. And the opening credits for the movie are her nude dancing silhouetted against a tropical sunset.
Recently, though, the movie's been reappraised as having a lot more going for it than just Brooke Shields. This usually gets classified as a proto-slasher movie, and I can see why, but don't go into this expecting an 80s-style slasher flick. This is very much a 1970s slow burn type of horror film, one that's more concerned with themes of religious guilt and the disintegration of a family than simply racking up a high body count. Of course, it does deliver the goods on a lot of the kill scenes, too, and the scares never seem cheap or gratuitous. Paula Shepherd also does a great job as Alice, so it's a shame she was only in one other movie after this, 1982's Liquid Sky. Yeah, that's another one I'm going to have to get to one of these days. Some of the other acting is a little hammy, but...
And also the fact that, well, it doesn't completely condemn everybody religious is also something that definitely is not going to get it to be on the good side of those who think that horror movies begin and end with all the insufferable woke bullshit that A24 constitutes as horror movies these days, you know, or fart-huffing Tumblr pandering hacks like Ari Aster who build all their quote-unquote horror filmmaking around whatever it is that they know Tumblr is going to lap up like fucking candy.
Overall, I'm glad this is finally getting more attention. It's an interesting little horror flick that deserves to be known as more than just Brooke Shields' first movie, and fans of 70s Italian horror flicks especially should give this one.
And what's strange is that with this movie, having Brooke Shields get killed as a little girl in the first 10 minutes is still nowhere near as disturbing or as Epstein-horrific as all the other films that she did from that early era between, you know, Pretty Baby or The Blue Lagoon. Just saying.
Want to look. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta go to confession. I had some impure thoughts while watching a nunsploitation flick again. Well, that's all for now. Until next time.
You didn't eat your lunch.
I want my cake now.
And to prove to you I'm not making up the Tanya, what I said about Tanya's Island, here It is. Here's an example of it, if I can get it. Where is it? Should be here. Yeah, it's Mick Garris involved. Jesus. Oh, wait, here it is.
This is Trailers from Hell, and I'm Mick Garris. Our trailer this time around is for a movie called Tanya's Island, and I've got a dirty little secret about it. It's a movie I'd completely forgotten about until I saw it listed in the vast archives of Trailers from Hell.
Once upon a time, there was a man, a woman, and a beast.
I love the breathlessness of this trailer. It's so artful and so beautiful and so romantic for a movie that it tries to be those things, but it's kind of embarrassing. My name is nowhere to be found in the credits, which is pretty merciful. In 1980, I was writing my ass off trying to kickstart a screenwriting career, interviewing filmmakers for magazines and my old Z Channel show, and learning everything I could about making movies. I interviewed Alfred Soul after he had directed the really remarkable Alice, Sweet Alice, also known as Communion. We became friends, and when he was looking for a writing partner for this new Beauty and the Beast project he was working on, he came to me and we worked on it together. By the time the film was greenlit, it had been completely overhauled by the film's producer, Pierre Brousseau, and Alfred with his Communion collaborator, Rosemary Ritvo. When I saw the film, not much of what I had done had survived, and that was probably a good thing. Somehow, it had become this mad, insane sex triangle between a man, a woman, and a Rob Bottin gorilla. And believe me, if you can track this movie down, it's really nuts, quite out of its mind and really worth seeing. Alfred actually hired me to be his assistant, but never bothered to clear it with Immigration or the Directors Guild of Canada. It was based in Toronto, and the rest of the locations shot in Puerto Rico. So while I was running errands in Toronto, the DGC reps were visiting the production offices to sniff me out and send me home. The city scenes were shot there in Toronto, and I remember it being one of the hottest and most humid summers of my life, at least for the 2 weeks I worked lugging things around before being shipped back home to LA. I never got to Puerto Rico, but I wish I had. I'd introduced Alfred to Rob Bottin, who was just starting to do the work that made him legendary right around the time of The Howling. Rick Baker was Rob's mentor and was a consultant on this film, the same as he was on The Howling. So at least the makeup was in great hands. Don McLeod, who played Blue, the lovesick lover gorilla, had been a friend of mine way back from my old rock and roll days in San Diego. He was a mime there, and we did several shows together. We even composed and performed a big musical piece together. So Don, who was also the American tourist or gorilla, lost tons of weight, sweating into the foam rubber suit and collapsing more than once during this production. Tanya was played by Dee Dee Winters, who later became known as Vanity, lead singer of Vanity 6, but even better known as Prince's girlfriend. This is an absolutely insane Macumba love kind of story that I guess tries to make some kind of statement about man versus beast, but really just a reason to justify a movie about a gorilla that fucks a beautiful girl, and she likes it.
The beast follows his nature.
Yes. The whole movie revolves around a horny gorilla that wants to pursue a black woman. Well, a gorilla going after a black woman, you definitely know that is the most fantastical thing about the film. Yes, and she likes it. Which, well, as especially around these parts of YouTube, we've all shown and have proven about women being hornier than men and being really fucking weird about it. To the point where if you took the script to this movie and then simply did a novelization of it, you would have a perverted romantasy, bestiality glorifying novel that would be as big with book talk perverts as Morning Glory Milking Farm. And then you could once again make it into a film that if you got the right pretentious hoe bag filmmaker with the right accent and the right politics and the right melanin count, e.g. Guillermo del Toro, it would win Best Picture every year, all year.
His Tanya. Fantasy and reality meet on Tanya's Island.
I mean, we all knew that Vanity was a nasty girl, but even that's a little much. Even that's a little, something that would make even our friend Charlie Sheen go, what the fuck is wrong with you? And speaking of porn stars that are still better actresses than Scarlett Johansson, 70s porn icon Miss Marilyn Chambers in her one mainstream role, Rabid.
Hi, I'm Mick Garris, and this is Trailers from Hell. And tonight's Trailer from Hell was my introduction to the biological horror of the brilliant David Cronenberg, Rabid. Now, any great exploitation film trailer has to start with a motorcycle crash and an explosion. You know, that's a great way to go. But Rabid is a very unconventional kind of movie. It really was an experience. I saw it on Hollywood Boulevard and was so knocked out by it that when I saw it was playing with what was called They Came From Within, everywhere else around the world it was called Shivers, it was on a double bill. I actually went the next day to see both of those movies and became a diehard Cronenberg fan at that point. The writing was really one of the most remarkable things about his films, because so many exploitation films like this there was nothing beyond the blood and guts and boobs. Whereas in Cronenberg's films, there was an intellect at work, and there was a lot on his mind that was very impressive to me. And I was really into the kind of creeping terror sort of Invasion of the Body Snatchers movie. Again, it's sort of like a vampire movie where the virus is spread and everybody becomes zombies of a sort during the course of that. And this is one of the best of the bunch. Marilyn Chambers, of course, was a porn actress. And she was famous for that. She'd never made a mainstream movie. And Ivan Reitman, the producer, who later became a big-time director of big studio comedies, he suggested her. She was looking to break into the mainstream. Cronenberg originally planned on Sissy Spacek, but the producers didn't like her Texas accent. So Cronenberg went along with Reitman's idea to cast a porn queen. So Reitman also was very involved in the music for this film. There was no score written for the movie. This, like Night of the Living Dead, was all drawn from the Capitol Music Library. So it was a different kind of horror movie, and biological horror was the name of the game that really kind of set the pace for the rest of Cronenberg's career.
Don't scream, don't panic. He's dead, and the dead can't hurt the living.
And also, our friend Marilyn Chambers, who starred in the movie, before she went into porn, she was famous as a model that was on the box for Ivory Snow soap. And here earlier today, I went out to this one vintage store, and look at this. Behind the counter, they had a box of the Ivory Snow. And yes, that porn star, Marilyn Chambers, that movie Rabid being her only mainstream role, here she was as the lady with the baby on the box of Ivory Snow before she went into porn. And then later on, when she wound up becoming a 70s porn queen, doing stuff like Behind the Green Door and what have you, she would then go and do nude photo spreads with the Ivory soap box, which actually was still on sale with her likeness right there on the box as she then became a 70s porn queen. And like I said, either there or in her hardcore porn acting, still a better actress than Scarlett Johansson or Megan Fox or Jennifer Lawrence could ever hope to be. But as I joked earlier, when I asked the guy behind the counter if that was, Marilyn Chambers, like that famous Ivory soap box, he said, yes. I mentioned, yeah, in that, her one mainstream movie, she still gives a far better performance than Scarlett Johansson, but then they would go and dismiss her as some porno star. But at least what she was doing at those guys was honest and up front and center for everyone to see, as opposed to, all of it, being behind the scenes, behind the camera, like what happens with those, like, say, Jennifer Lawrence and Harvey. Jennifer Lawrence winning an Oscar on the back of letting David O. Russell and Harvey Weinstein take turns coming on her face. I'm guessing because she'd rather do guys honestly up front on camera instead of doing Harvey Weinstein behind the scenes, they dismiss her as not being a serious actress. Yes, the product being 9944/100% pure. And yes, there's the box right there. God knows how much one of those would go for on eBay.
Aaron, I picked this one for you.
I hope so.
So that you can comment on all the ladies in it.
Uh-oh.
We're watching Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers.
Oh, I'm so mean.
Sent to us by Nate. The good news is Michelle Bauer is on the cover holding a chainsaw. And I believe that's Linnea Quigley on the back.
Okay.
Starring Linnea Quigley. And Gunnar Hansen. Oh, I didn't even see that.
Who?
Leatherface.
Nice.
Bad news. Fred Olen Ray movie. So 50% chance we'll like it. 50% it's just a bad comedy that we hate.
All right.
100% I'm going to be meaner than I need to be.
Correct. But we'll like it.
We'll enjoy part of it.
Oh, no.
We'll enjoy all of this, though. From Scott and Kathy, once again from the ever-popular Hop and Frog Brewery. The full name of this is the J. Froggington, I Can't Lie, Black Cherry Turbo Shandy Ale.
Word stuff.
Well said. See chainsaw, I just think Texas Chainsaw.
Word.
And, with Gunner in it.
Gunner?
Yeah, but I didn't even know that.
Oh.
Thinking.
Oh, strenuous sex? Huh?
Okay. I've never
That's
seen
dumb. That's a dumb warning.
I would say this is going to lean into the bad comedy.
You. Uh-oh.
And then we did it,
How many times?
How many times?
He's putting that in his spank bank. That's why he's asking.
Well, then he told me he was broke and could I give him a break?
What'd you do next?
She had him pay first.
Cut him with the chainsaw.
Then what did you do?
I'll show you.
I don't know that she could have started that.
No, she had trouble picking it up.
Yeah, little stick arms.
Yeah, but that was strenuous.
You're right. She could barely hold it.
Am I wrong, or is this like a semi-famous B movie?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even before getting into doing bad movies, I'd heard of it. It's got a pretty insane title.
Mm-hmm.
Is this what you would put on Cinemax? This kind of movie?
No. The Cinemax were always like erotic dramas or erotic thrillers.
Oh, they took themselves seriously more? I mean,
they didn't do all the gore stuff. Most people don't want to be, beating their meat and then some guy's head gets cut off. It's probably more people.
This is the played page as completed. Here we are with page 13. Got some interesting use of perspective in there. I like to think so. And let's also see what you all think of this. Stretch this one up and out right here. And also, now we are into the other half of the story. So we are now getting deeper and deeper into this, and we are getting better and bigger with what we have got planned to be finally go and executed. So, this is the last call, everybody. The last call for super chats, the last call for channel memberships, and last call for donations into the store. Bring it on in. We've had a good night with supers and with gifted memberships. So if we can go and get business in the store, that would be the trifecta of a stream going on and executing absolutely beautifully. Oh yes, it'll be like magic. For all the witches and the warlocks and the conjurers and the sorcerers and the black magicians and the white magicians. Got this faster than you can knife a goat. That works like magic. Battle-matic. Yes, the bass, that's the whole bass in the Bassomatic 76. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Oh, the baby. There we go. And on that note, I want to thank you all for watching. Subscribe so the channel will reach 10,000 subs. Become a member today and shop my art store with that first link in the description below, where you can buy my art or commission me or support me directly with a donation, or go and buy my comic book Encrypted, where a copy is $5, an autographed copy is $10, or an autographed and sketched in copy is $20, or you can get a 1-year subscription for $60, or a subscription with your copies autographed for $90. Tomorrow, I'll have shorts at 5 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 and 6. I'll have a new video at 6:30, and I'll be live again at 10. So until then, felines, slam it, lick it, suck it, and see you, Space Cowboys.